Oh, I was muted. We were going live, and I surprised Green. So if you want to go ahead and do what you were going to do, you can take a
I
second.
can hold it. I was just going to run the washroom, but it's not pressing. I can hold it.
Or if you want to, we can take a second and put up a BRB for a moment. I am perfectly fine with doing that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, we will be right back, and then we'll get to it. But give us 30 seconds, and then we will start because I missed a message. One moment, guys. Thank you all. And we're back. Okay, great.
Right. Sorry about that, folks.
Apologies. And let's get started. Little later than we thought, but that's okay. Cool. All right. Welcome.
A full day later than we thought.
Yes, a full day later than we thought, but it happens. I've had a lot of it. It's a lot to teach.
Let me
Let's
tweet
put it
these
that
out.
way.
I haven't tweeted this out yet. Last I checked, Twitter, you haven't sent it out yet.
Yes, but essentially, yes, it's a lot. I'm teaching an asynchronous, fully online class, and so it's yeah, you have to do a lot more work than just showing up and discussing things in a seminar, as I've found, unfortunately.
All right.
So welcome to StarTrekkin. Welcome to the stream. I am Nicole. And across the city on long weekend in Canada and Toronto, which is quite cold and rainy and kind of meh, is
this has been a good day to stay in and play video games.
Yes, it has been. It has been. So, how are you doing?
I'm all right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Slept in, did nothing.
Hmm.
I gotta go. When we're done this, I'm gonna have to go like get off my ass and do stuff. Because I still have a big mess from yesterday's. My mother was over, so I made food and I haven't cleaned that mess up yet. So I gotta go do that. But yes, I haven't done jack shit today. Otherwise, which hey, we all deserve a day off.
Yeah, certainly. I'm going to share this real quick, and then we'll get back to the discussion that we were having earlier. Because we were like starting to have a conversation, and then we're like, why are we having this conversation here? Well, we can
Yeah,
have it
about
on
Star Trek.
stream, which is like the usual thing. But here we are. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day, Green. I don't know. I also know it was Orange Shirt Day a little earlier in the month, and you were doing some stuff for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, in Canada, it's Thanksgiving, which has been so as a way of pushing back against like the Thanksgiving myth. Although once again, Canadian Thanksgiving is different than American Thanksgiving, but
Mhm.
we've been trying to push back and do some reappropriation by redubbing it Indigenous Peoples Day. Um, I got some opinions on Truth and Reconciliation Day, which was last week, which
Mhm.
is that yeah, Trudeau and his friends like sorry for this genocide we created, or sorry for the genocide that like we are responsible for, that our government is responsible for. We're going to give ourselves all the day off.
Yeah.
I didn't get the day off. I went to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like Gary's a government employee, he gets the day off. The schools are closed. You know, like they're we had a discussion. I worked at one organization that was a nonprofit, and we had a discussion about it. Um and a number of us felt that like we should be open for our, because we were serving people who needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt, we should be open for the people that we served, because they were marginalized, and some of them were potentially indigenous, and it didn't make sense for us to take the day off and take away our services from people that might need it on a day when even though we're supposed to reflect about things that happen, there were still things happening and still people we could help. And
Mm-hmm.
the leadership was like, no, you can reflect and take the time that you want to, and blah, blah, blah. And I
It
just
just
don't think people do that.
yeah, no, they don't. They don't. Unless you're going to a specific event. Like, and to be fair, why should they?
Mhm.
Right? Like, there's no mandate to.
No.
Um, and so what it comes down to a lot of times for Indigenous people is like, hey, Truth and Reconciliation Day, all of the services I need are closed.
Yeah. Yeah. That was kind of our argument, was like, well, like, what if, in the area that we were serving, it was primarily, black folks, Caribbean folks,
Yeah.
South Asian folks. But like there were in there indigenous folks too, right?
Mhm.
And what if they needed help from like one of us and
Yep.
our hotline was closed, right?
And
So
and
didn't
if
make sense to do that, right?
if it was a stat holiday, at least then everyone would get the day off.
Hmm.
But like I said,
Right.
I went to work,
Yeah,
right? Like
and because
most
it's like
Native
not a
people,
federal, it's not a federal
mm,
mandated holiday, right?
yeah,
Like because Doug Ford is a jerk, it depends. And because I said Gary gets the day off because Gary works for CBC. He's
mm,
a federal employer. So,
but like, well, but I mean, it's not just. I mean, it's not just Ford. It is certainly partially Ford. Ford
yeah.
chose, but it could have like Trudeau could have made it a stat holiday and given everyone day off.
Hmm.
Trudeau had that choice. He didn't. He made
Yeah.
it And Ford could have taken the mandate, and Ford never was going to. Like, no, under no world was Ford going to.
Trudeau knew certain people wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
I mean, like we know
every
who he is
province.
from the, like, thanks for your donation, right? Like that's who he is.
Yeah.
That's the guy he is.
I mean, I was at that protest, the Thanks for Your Donation protest. I was
Were
there.
you really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't
Uh,
know that. You were at historical event.
um,
Dude,
I
my
wasn't in,
friend,
I
you
wasn't
know?
one of the people who snuck the banner inside. I was,
So you're still there. That's pretty
but I
cool.
was, yeah. Well, I mean, I was outside the building because there was a massive protest happening outside the building as well. And I was on those front lines.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, I was at that protest.
That I will never forget that. That's like a mask off moment, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, yeah, that's who you are. And that's why I will never really believe his sincerity about certain things.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, he's deeply insincere. And
Mm.
like, uh, we could talk. I could go into all of the things that are, because um his government's in trouble. He's probably going to get removed this term, probably probably with the super transphobic Pierre Polyev. Um, and then Pierre Polyev will inevitably fail, and then Christian Freeland, uh, Trudeau's successor, who has pretty explicit ties to the Nazi Party of like Ukraine.
I'm sorry, wrote me a
There
sorry,
are
Green. Don't you know that she's the savior of Western democracy? Don't you know?
there are literally photos of her posing with Nazi
I
memorabilia.
know, I
Like,
know, I know, but, like, people have,
um,
literally called her the savior of Western democracy. That's the
so,
joke around here.
um,
But
and
which is ridiculous. She's not the savior of Western
well,
democracy.
she's running. She's going to be running against the conservatives, but even though she's a liberal, she's going to be running to the right. Sorry, to the left of the. Sorry, no, I had it right. She's going to be running to the left of the conservative. Sorry, to the right of the conservatives. Like, she's
Mm.
going to be more conservative than the conservatives. That's her class. What her platform's going to be.
Yeah, unless this Nazi, like, her grandfather and her background, frankly, it kind of, like, forces them to run Melanie Jolie because they've kind of been, like, raising both their profile at the same time because I
Yeah.
think I think Jolie might, like, Freeland is
Well,
yeah,
certainly with
she's stuck her foot in her mouth more than one time too.
the standing
Um
ovation to an actual Nazi,
mhm.
who is still alive and is now being extradited to Poland for war crimes. uh,
Oh my god. We
that
just
might
look
have
so
sabotaged
good all
her.
the time. Just never an embarrassment in Canada. You
Yeah,
know,
just utterly, completely shameless, eh?
just
Um,
just really
but
just really a competent nation that
I
is,
wonder how many Canadians know about it though, and I like that could sabotage her. That could end her political career, but I don't think it won't. I don't think it will. Because I don't think a lot of Canadians know about it. And the reason why I don't think a lot of Canadians know about it is because of the Facebook news ban. Um, because
yeah.
Facebook is where most Canadians get their news, and now that Facebook, like this is so Zuckerberg is acting like he is harming the Trudeau government by boycotting news, but the Trudeau government benefits from Canadians having no idea what's going on.
It's a real difficulty too because taking money, my argument has always been with this people, all of the news organizations, including like some of the smaller independent ones like Canada Land, have argued for, yes, we should have money from these big tech corporations. As someone who studies this stuff, extensively, taking money from these corporations, no matter how you do it, whether it's through the government or otherwise, is the devil's bargain.
I mean, I think they should all be antitrusted, but that's me.
Yeah, they should all be antitrusted, but if you however you take the money, there is going to be some sort of censorship, whether it's self-censorship, institutional, whatever. How can you criticize Google and Facebook, Meta, whoever, Amazon, if they are giving you money through even if it's through the government?
Mm-hmm.
How can you be a responsible journalist
Yeah.
if they are keeping you afloat? Like, I don't understand how journalists can make this argument. I understand that they need money, but before we go much further onto this track, for Indigenous Peoples Day, as we often do, Coyote and Crow apparently, I haven't checked this out yet. Apparently, Coyote Crow is doing pay what you want for this game, which is a really interesting game. I've heard a lot of great things about it. It is a first game for a lot of these developers, so I mean, I've heard it may not be perfect, but it's different from anything that's been made before in terms of setting. A lot of the design is different, and it's made by a fully Indigenous team. And I think supporting something that's different in RPGs is worth, purchasing it alone. And pay what you want means if you can pay more, pay more. If you can pay less, that's fine too. So if it's a time that you are having difficulty, getting really different great role-playing games, or you're saying, I can't afford to play a different role-playing game, here's a game you can play. It does, have some specificities about what you can play if you're not someone who comes from a native background, I think.
It actually doesn't. It actually doesn't.
It doesn't? Or no, so that's misinformation that's out there.
This is a big misunderstanding about the game.
But they want you not to be a jerk, basically, when you play
the game. So right on like page 1, there's a big thing about how, yes, anyone can play this game. I've got some criticisms of this game, which is not
fair.
It's not worth time. I've got my physical copy right here. And like my criticisms of it are mostly really intended for like native audiences. Like my criticisms about how, hey, this kind of erases the Metsi and the Cherokee Freedmen. Like that's really a conversation for native communities. That's really not a conversation for settler communities. So most of my criticisms of it are
and that's
very
fair. I think settlers, white people in general, I think a lot of us, Westerners, like a lot of us stick our nose into conversations that we are ill-informed about and really shouldn't be involved in too often. It's fine to listen and figure out what's going on, but you don't need to have an opinion on it. Like I don't need to have an opinion on Indigenous or Métis politics or anything like that, because I am neither. But I'm happy to hear you talk about them. And
it's just like my like, I'm not going to roll into Finland and tell the Finnish government how to run things. Like I might have some notes, but I like
I mean, there are Indigenous people in Finland, so I mean, there might be notes.
Yeah. But once that's actually, I'm not going to tell the Sami how to run their shit. Like I don't know anything about Sami.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're a very different. They have reindeer, man. I mean, they're up north, but I mean, they're totally different kind of people.
Well, they've been on those territories for 3,000 years, which is older than Christianity, and way before the North showed up. They've been there a long time. So yeah, just going to read a quick excerpt for this, just so people are clear. Like you can play this
just to clear up this misinformation, which I mean was rampant on Reddit. Let me just say in the conversation about this.
You can play Coyote Crow as a non-native. One, like this, that's the hobby, right?
That's the point. That's the point of the game, I would assume.
Like, so it's not, they're not just selling just to natives, they're selling to the whole audience.
Oh no, the point of the game, like I would not be putting it up here if you can't play Coyote and Crow as a non-native, right?
So there's a whole multi-paragraph thing here about, I'm only going to read the first paragraph. if you do not have heritage indigenous to the Americas, we ask you not to incorporate any of your knowledge or ideas of real-world Native Americans into the game. Not only may this culturally not only may it be culturally insensitive, but many of the assumptions you might make would not fit into this timeline. Instead, we delve into details of the world you are given without trying to rewrite history or impose your perspectives. Basically, what they want, you don't have to be native to play it. They just don't want you to bring your native biases, your assumptions about how native societies work. That's
they
the
don't
one.
don't
That's the
want
one thing they make.
the tragic, kind of like the idea that there is no, like basically the histories that we assume or we know of native people or of
Well,
indigenous people here.
and I mean, there's a lot of it's like basic stuff. Like if you're playing a game, like they may the game, depending on where it's set, may or may not incorporate TPs. TPs are like a very specific geographic area. Even then, like, so I'm mid-chiff or mid-sea, and we didn't really use TPs, but we're from the geographic area that TPs are from.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
like people often talk about totem poles, right? Totem poles are only Pacific Northwest and
yeah,
only very certain
they're
tribes,
Salish
right?
and Haida and like, so like they just don't want you to bring a lot of those biases. They detail the cultures. You go off the book. Beyond that, they don't care if you're native or not. Play it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what some people were saying that, but some people were like, "Oh, well, that's not fair if I can't use my knowledge." And I'm like, "Well, what? Like as a white person, you're like this expert in native culture? Like,
Yeah,
really? Come on. Like
yeah.
how, even as someone who has studied like Japanese culture, I'm not going to say I'm an expert in Japanese culture. Like I can read as much as I want, but I'm not someone who's lived there or has grown up as a Japanese person.
Mm-hmm.
So, like how are we going to say that? Anyway, it's an interesting role-playing game. If you're indigenous, you may have criticisms of it that are separate from that. I definitely saw some out there, and that's totally fair. If you're not, it's definitely a different perspective and an interesting one, and something that you can do to support new creators, fairly new creators of role-playing games out there, and a
Yeah,
different game than the dragon game.
it's a neat game. I would like to stream it sometime. Speaking of streams,
Oh yeah, talk about that for sure.
so we don't have a date nailed down yet, because but I'm doing a Hunter the Reckoning stream, charity stream with some native RPG nerds and the guys from the Emmy, the award-winning, I forget the name of the award, the award-winning
Ennies?
actual play podcast, Pink Fohawk.
Yeah, the Ennies.
The
Ennie
Ennies, yeah,
Award.
Ennies. So yeah, so it was Ennies. With the reason why we don't have a date nailed down is because they're busy guys, and like one of them works for HBO as like an editor. So like so that
Ooh,
some,
fancy.
sometime in the next month we'll be sitting down and doing a charity podcast, charity stream, with proceeds going towards relief for the fires in northern Canada.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super cool, and I'm excited to hear like that it'll be a lot of fun, and I think it would be great to raise money for that. And Hunter the Reckoning is always an interesting game. I haven't played a lot of it, but it's definitely
Okay,
different. It's
it's
something else. Yeah.
fifth ed is a different beast from third.
Oh, I'm
But yeah,
sure it is.
I'll specifically be running this campaign, Lions Drawn Blood.
Oh,
Or
fifth ed would be a trip, because in the world of fifth ed, hunters can actually do some damage. They have some power, I would
Not
imagine.
not 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 the hunters you play in Hunter the Reckoning. There's a
Oh,
distinctive, like the book. So the way Hunter the Reckoning, the fifth edition, is designed is there are the big hunters that can do some damage in Vampire the Masquerade, the Second Inquisition. There is a book for the Second Inquisition. I also have it right here.
Second Inquisition
But
is
but
fascinating.
you aren't playing these. You aren't
Ah,
playing the
okay.
Second Inquisition. You are playing Joe fucking Hamburger, who has learned that vampires or werewolves or whatever is real, and it has decided to take up and do something about it themselves.
Ah, gotcha. Well,
Mm.
that's more fun in a way, really.
Yeah.
That was me in Parliament of Shadows, subcontractors for the Vatican.
Mm. Yeah. That's
Yes,
covered. That's
we did.
covered in this book. This book is non PC.
Yeah,
This is all
yeah,
NPC, but they got beef. Like the Vatican,
yeah.
the Vatican hunters are. Ooh, you don't mess around with them.
We did not have beef. We were told what to do, but we weren't working for the Vatican. We
Mm.
insisted we were
Oh,
subcontractors for the Vatican.
so you weren't actually members of the Society of Leopold. You were just like hired by them.
We just found out there were we were EU functionaries who found, like, EU basically bureaucrats who found out that there were vampires in a meeting, and then we were like, oh shit, we need to do something about this. And meant the prince of the city, and then we're terrified. And we're like, I don't know what to do. And the Vatican started telling us some stuff to do, and we're like, no, we don't work for that organization, we're subcontractors.
Mm.
um
All right.
that didn't
Yeah.
help with the ghouls, though. They all wanted to murder us. So it was fun times. Fun times.
Yeah.
It was the best vampire game I ever played because I was terrified the entire time and thought I was going to die.
Which is how vampire should be played. Yeah. So
Yes.
the premise of the game I'm going to be running anyways will be vampires in Yellowknife.
Sounds great. Very
Uh,
hungry vampires, I'm sure.
yeah.
So what we were talking about before we came on stream was streaming of the other kind of broadcast streaming, because Green sent me a version of an article I had actually read earlier. The article Green sent me, they sent me, it was from Giant Fucking Robot, and I'd run one on Screen Rant that was basically like covering the same article from like an interview with Mike Mann, who's the showrunner for Lower Decks, and talking about sort of obliquely, in a sideways fashion, about how many, well, directly and then obliquely, about potential cancellation of Lower Decks, and basically how all of the Star Trek shows are ending over the last year or so, or over the next year or so,
Yeah.
and
Well.
how Lower Decks could be a 5 season show if people don't watch it and talk about it and basically like indicate that they want it to keep going on. And we are in an interesting position. I was just thinking about this and didn't mention it before, which is good actually, that we went from, streaming with like one show to like all the shows, and are starting to come down to like less shows again, because like we started with just Discovery, I think,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Just
And we've
Discovery.
gone back, which is great. Like when I think about it, like it's really amazing that we've
There.
been doing it, A, this long, and B, to go through the Star Trek renaissance and back out. And the thing that we were saying is like what happened, what we've done it through is streaming, is the streaming boom, right?
Mm.
And bust is, I
Yeah.
think, what's happening now.
Well, yeah. I mean, streaming was never a sustainable. Was never a sustainable model. I knew that even when I was less cynical towards it. I've known for uh, years that streaming was non-sustainable. I think anyone who pays attention to like numbers and the behind the scenes shit knew that streaming wasn't sustainable.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's not to say I don't think that there's a future for streaming, but streaming is really good for archiving. right? Streaming is really good for Disney puts out a movie on theaters, makes their bank at the theater, and then it just goes up on Disney Plus where like it's archived indefinitely. But that's not where the movie is making its core money. It's making its
Or
because this is the problem
yeah,
is that like
or like linear
yeah
TV to streaming the
yeah
next day or within 12 hours, right? Yeah.
yeah um because then you get the ad revenue and you get all that stuff, and like we talked about it. I'm now watching Lower Decks on television, which is first time I've sat down and watched television forever. I haven't watched, but like, um, I mean, and once again, I'm just fortunate I live in Canada where I can do that. No other country can do that. But like, also, I mean, there's also the budget on these Star Trek shows. Discovery was the most expensive TV show ever made when it first premiered.
Mm-hmm.
Discovery's
Yeah.
budget was astronomical.
Yeah, it really was. And I mean, like I was saying, I wish Gary was up. He's kind of lying down because he actually works. Like his job for CBC is in streaming.
Mhm.
But he, as a public broadcaster, they are somewhat subject to the same pressures, but not necessarily in the same way.
Yeah, well,
Um,
they're guaranteed funding, right?
yes.
Until the conservatives cut their budget, anyways.
Mm. So they have some lack of issues with that. But yeah, like the thing is, uh, what's gonna happen? Yeah, like this is the thing that we were kind of saying is no one knows what's going to happen with Star Trek because
Mhm.
we were in a situation where we had, you know, a huge amount of it. And the thing that's kind of unfortunate, I think, in my opinion, is even the Star Trek that hasn't been perfect or ideal has been better in a lot of ways than the worst of the Star Wars or the worst of the Marvel series.
It's at least yeah. So like I've completely dipped on Star Wars. I have,
Me
and
too.
I haven't checked out I haven't checked
Oh,
out Loki season 2. I haven't checked out Secret
mm,
Invasion.
me
Um,
either.
so I'm
I watch Andor. Like I'll watch Andor and that's it. Like
yeah.
I don't I
I got to sit down and watch Andor. People tell me I like it, although I gotta watch it soon because Disney Plus is getting rid of password sharing at the end of the month.
oh my god, really? Oh, that's
Yep.
really annoying.
Um, but
Because I've shared it with a whole bunch of people. So
yeah,
that's
only in
really
Canada.
annoying.
I think states are still fine, but in Canada they're getting rid of password sharing. Um, but yeah, like I the even when Star Trek has been bad, it's been at least interesting. Like
Mhm.
Discovery season 1, I don't particularly care for, but it's bad in a very interesting way. Like it swung for the fences, and sure it missed, but at least took that swing.
I liked it a lot, but I just like Evil Captain. I love Lorca. So I'm just all about Lorca. So but yeah, I mean it was doing something interesting.
Yeah, like
Like that's the thing.
the first 2 seasons of Picard are interesting. We have issues with both of them, but
At least
they
they're not
certainly
fan servicey. They're not like I
yeah,
mean, I
I think
didn't hate the last season of Picard, but I mean when I look back at it, I'm like
I,
it's just fan it's just
I
I mean I'm fine with it, give me the fan service, but at the same time it's just retreading again,
we
and this is what we were talking about hauntology, like Mark Fisher and hauntology, and
yeah,
how like things are just kind of now retreading the past, and haunted
yeah.
by past things, we talk so much about how Star Trek is supposed to go forward,
Mhm.
and I talked about this in a class of mine, and even the Star Trek that is new, like even Strange New Worlds and all of these, even Lower Decks is retreading the past,
Yeah.
right?
We reviewed when we were covering Picard season 3, we reviewed it pretty good. But like in retrospect, I don't think it holds up nearly as well. Like a lot of it was nostalgia buttons being pushed. because, and I actually do think it's quite good until the Borg show up. It's the Borg,
Yeah.
I think, that like the Borg, what I think really, because the Borg plotline comes out of nowhere. It's clear that it's there for nostalgia. The Picard season 1 already covered the Borg. I don't think, yeah, I think
Yeah,
the
if it
Borg,
had been almost anything else,
yeah,
like it, and that's when it started to get really like fan servicey, like the last few episodes. And like I said, I really liked it watching it. Like it's not like it wasn't enjoyable,
yeah,
but it
I like,
wasn't challenging. And
mhm,
that was what I was mentioning about talking on Blue Sky with Jamie McKelvey about, was like I didn't feel like Strange New World season 2 was as challenging as season 1.
yeah.
And the
I like,
quality is, he was saying the quality has been so different in the writing sometimes, and like just
yeah.
the tone, right? The logic of the story.
Well, and like I think if I recall correctly, I called this out when Picard season 3 even happened, which is that the Borg plotline gets no room. It's 2 episodes. It's 2 episodes. It gets
Yes,
dropped out of nowhere.
you did. Yeah.
It gets dropped out of nowhere. Like it needed it, it. Like at the time, I just thought it was just rushed plot, but in retrospect, it really, really is just like, hey, remember this thing you like?
And that's so much, that's a lot of TV. I mean, like that's like the Ready Player One kind of approach, right?
Yeah,
Like, oh, here's this thing that you like. Here are multiple things that you like. Remember this thing that you like? Here is another thing that you like. Remember, I will describe it for you, right? So
I've never read Ready Player One, and I'm never going to.
no,
No,
it's a weird
nor
thing.
have I seen the movie.
Don't want no. I have this thing where sometimes I hate read things.
Mm,
Um, so that was one of them. There was a podcast for a while that I used to listen to where people reviewed terrible books, and one of the funniest episodes is on Ready Player One.
I don't.
It's just such a distilled white male geekdom of
Yeah.
the dudes of my generation that it was just, I read it just to be like, oh my god, I hate this person so much. It
Yeah,
just, you
I had a conversation with Zoe Quinn back when we were still talking about
know, mhm.
it, and that was their conclusion as well.
Yeah,
But
I'm
I
not surprised.
basically most of what I know about Ready Player One comes secondhand from Zoe Quinn and like a couple other nerd friends who have read it. I don't actually know a lot of people who've read it. Um,
I'm not surprised they said that, because it's just like, dudes of a certain age, kind of the Gen X, elder millennial era, who love nerd things, who are like, it's just that guy is that guy, and it's just like, you know,
mm,
I don't know why, and there's so much that's wrong with it. And I don't know why I like hate reading it sometimes. Like Gary was even like, "Why are you reading this?" I'm like, "I just hate it so much. I just
I
hate it."
I for the most part don't have the patience for that. I just don't have the patience. I talk about going and hate watching Avatar, and I've just never gone around to it.
It's
Um,
a surprisingly decent movie, but yes, it's like,
oh,
"Oh, here's the
it's James
magical
Cameron.
white boy to
That
save the natives," Yeah.
it's James Cameron. I'm sure it's very compelling and well made. He's a
Yeah,
great
I was
director.
shocked.
So I have no doubt I have no doubt that it's the first Avatar is also very compelling. If you look at it just on a narrative
Oh, that's
standpoint
what I
without
meant, the
the rest
first
of it.
Avatar. I had avoided it for a long time. I haven't
Oh
seen the
yeah, no,
second one.
I've seen the first one.
The first
The
one,
second one I haven't seen.
I haven't seen
Um,
the second one either, but the first one I avoided for a long time, and eventually I'm like, "I'll watch it." And I'm like, "Wow,
it's engaging.
I did not know this was actually a decent movie." Wow.
It's yeah. If you ignore the
Colonialism and,
all of the colonialism, all
racism
of the anti-native stuff, and you
and
like
the magical white
and
boy.
you just look at like just how it's put together as a film, it's very compelling. Um,
Yeah.
but Yeah, I mean, it's James Cameron. He's a very good director. He's good at his job. He's also from
He
He's also
tried.
from.
He tried.
I don't think he did.
Oh, really?
Not on the like. I mean, like I said,
Oh,
he made a very watchable movie. But I don't think
yeah,
he
I
tried
know.
on the
You're probably right. I mean,
other
he
angles.
was just like, save the environment. Mostly, it was kind of the
He's
message
from
in the end.
Kapuskasing. I have been to
Oh, yeah,
Kapuskasing. He
yeah.
knows native people. Kapuskasing has tons of native people. He should
Guess
know
he doesn't
better.
go home very often then.
I actually, he puts a lot of money into the Kapuskasing school.
Oh,
So
that's great.
I really I picture a bunch of like native people being like, don't tell him, don't make him angry. We need him to keep the school going.
Don't yell at him about the magical tree, okay? No yelling about the magical tree and people just hopping into native people's bodies and
Yeah,
all kinds of when I went on that ride, I knew nothing about Avatar. Okay, we'll get into Lower Decks after this, but just to digress one time, I went to Disney World and I went on the Avatar ride and I knew nothing about Avatar, like zero. I'm like, I just want to fly on a dragon. That's all I want to do. So we go into the ride and it tells you the whole backstory. And they're like, yeah, you're going to put your consciousness into this body. And I leaned over to Gary and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on here? We're going to take over some fucking native person's body. Like, is that what's happening? This is not okay. Gary's like, no, oh my God. And so I knew nothing. And I'm like, this is the craziest, like this is worse than the Jungle Cruise. What the fuck is happening? And yeah, that was my experience. So that was my first experience of Avatar going, this is the movie? Are you kidding me? So yeah, I'm like, I get to ride a dragon. Yay. Wait, what? What?
yeah. At least like I'm not going to play it either, but at least the Avatar Ubisoft video game had the prescience to make your character actually Navi and not just like a white imposter.
Yeah, I was
Or a
like,
human
where are these
imposter.
bodies coming from? What's happening? I was so like, I was just horrified. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And
Yeah,
then I'm like,
so
okay, just ride the dragon. Just ride the
yeah,
dragon. Just be happy with
it's
riding the dragon.
yeah. I'm not going to be playing the video game either. Quite frankly, it's kind of boring. I like the Ubisoft formula, unlike a lot of people, but even no.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Okay.
but
Did we have anything else? No, I think that was it
well,
to talk about before.
I mean,
Was it?
do we want to revisit before we get into Lower Decks? Do we want to revisit our conversation on Mark Fisher?
Oh yeah, well we were talking about that a little bit. Sure. Mark
Yeah,
Fisher was like is a writer who passed away.
philosopher.
Writer, philosopher. He was a punk. He had a punk blog basically, and a lot of his writings that are put into books are from his blog. And yeah, he you read Capitalist Realism, right, Green?
I read
That's
Capitalist
one of his
Realism.
biggest sort of like contributions to thought, which I think is pretty important. Which is the idea that we can't imagine a world without capitalism. We've gone past the point of being able to imagine any kind of
Mhm.
existence without capitalism.
Yeah, I also picked up Ghosts of My Life, but I haven't sat down and read it yet. But that's his writings on like mental health and depression.
And
Apparently,
Mark Fisher, go on. Sorry.
given the fact that I don't know how to trigger warning this. Given the fact that he did die by suicide, his writings on like depression apparently come out very grim.
I
Um,
would imagine he had a rough time. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, no, I'm not the biggest Mark Fisher fan. Like I definitely there are things he's written that I disagree with as far as essays go. So the only book I've read of his is Capitalist Realism, but I've read other stuff,
Yeah.
mostly essays. Um,
My
Capitalist,
supervisor is a big fan. Kelly
Capitalist
Brookstrom.
Realism is a fantastic book though. Like whatever else I have to disagree with him on, um, capitalist realism specifically um, is a very good book. But that goes into like hauntology, and because really, hauntology is Mark Fisher, and like it's based around the idea that like we keep regurgitating and living in the ghosts of the past. Hence, hauntology. We're haunted by our past.
There are two forms of hauntology, and it's from Jacques Derrida originally. And there's haunting by what was, so the past, and that's like what we're talking about with like what Green and I often talk about is like Star Trek is supposed to be in the future.
Yeah.
But all we see Star Trek doing is retreading the past. Star Trek is haunted by the ghosts of its past. It's unable to move forward.
This is why I get into like this is why I have issues with like the prequels. This is why I have issue with prequels in general. But especially prequels to something like Star Trek, which is very specifically designed to be looking forward.
Yeah, and then the other form of hauntology is haunted by what is to come. So haunted by like the specter of AI, even though we don't have anything that is really artificial intelligence. The idea of like, you know, Skynet or something like that haunts us and is like always terrifying people, or the idea of like these sort of autonomous things, the idea of the Matrix, the idea of these technology taking over. So we have, or the idea of Derrida thought of hauntology in terms of communism. So the specter of communism haunted Europe for so long that people would be reactionary against just the specter of communism, even though a communist like or socialist government never really existed in Europe.
Yeah,
other than like the Soviet Union.
The idea of like, so I've never heard hauntology be referred to as being haunted by the future, but I find that very compelling. It's very interesting to me. It reminds me of an anecdote I heard about Elon Musk. And the reason why the Cybertruck looks the way it does is because of one of Elon's many children supposedly asked him, why doesn't the future look like the future? And like the obvious answer to that is because we don't live in the future. We live in the present. But this idea there's this idea that like the present should have looked different because of like our ideas of what the past would have been. And like, I mean, I struggle with this too. This isn't just but like, yeah, I think the idea that we're haunted by the future is very interesting.
Yeah. Fisher talks a bit about too how in the piece that I have that I can send to you, that is about how electronic music sometime around 2000 stopped sounding like anything from the future. Electronic music from 2000 on sounded like it could have been made in 1990, could have been made, you know, like it could have been made like in the same like 20-year period. So like you listen to Daft Punk anytime through their periods of like making music, and it could have been made anytime through there. It's just a matter of like artistic styles rather than technological progress in terms of making music. So that's when it started to realize that like we're not progressing in terms of like we're not innovating.
We're iterating, which is fine to a point, but like when we're dealing with massive cataclysmic social issues, like climate change, like the iterating instead of innovating becomes a huge problem.
And I find that fascinating because like then you look at Star Trek and what Star Trek has inspired, right? Star Trek inspired flip phones. Star Trek inspired like so many technologies just by like the vision of what could be. They created a vision of the future and then inspired technologies to be created with that vision of the future. If Star Trek is just retreading visions of the future from the past, like what is going to be, what are future scientists going to see in Star Trek that is going to make them create the visions from, like, create the future from those visions? You know what I mean?
Right.
Who's going to create the
And
next phone from like tricorder, or I mean communicator?
although I will say that this is a double-pronged sword, because like a lot of the tech billionaires we have now, like, fail to understand science fiction as fiction. Like you hear like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all of these effective altruism long-termists talk about tech. They're all
Well, do you want
inspired
to
by
explain
sci-fi.
effective altruism and long-termism? Because that's some scary
I
stuff.
mean, long-termism is straight up a cult. There's just a cult
Mm.
of really rich dudes. But like they really view this mass exploitation of they really view like mass exploitation as justifiable because the future is out there, and there will be more people alive in the future, and therefore um um and therefore like all of the pain and suffering now is worth it because we'll build a utopia. Like, and
Mm.
this is the rhetoric of strongmen throughout all of history. But like it really comes in contemporary um contemporary Silicon Valley um uh, culture when it gets mixes with like utopian and dystopian sci-fi, because like um Jeff Bezos thinks the expanse is real.
Yeah. He wants to send Amazon workers up into space to, and
Yeah.
keep rich people on Earth, basically, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, like they're like the cost benefit analysis is, if a bunch of people die now and children in the future can live better, that's fine.
Meanwhile, like I also am haunted by the future, very much so, in a very different way, which is that like I lose sleep over like environmental collapse. Like I genuinely lose sleep. I saw a photo of the Amazon completely depleted of water. It literally gave me a panic attack. Like
Yeah,
that's not
people aren't aware of how bad things are.
so
Oh,
like
got a comment. One of the Foxy Alpha Roger Tango says one of the anecdotes I had heard about some libertarians is that some libertarians that were trying to create a utopia out in international waters is that they had to keep making rules and accidentally replicated government.
yes, well
Oops.
because we can talk about like I'm an anti-authoritarian. I'm a straight on anarchist. But like I don't even I just because I don't recognize hierarchy doesn't mean I don't recognize some form of governance. I just think that governance should be lateral,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So lateral with participation from all, but still governance.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. I mean, it would be a total anarchy. Nothing would get done, I imagine.
Well, there's I mean, so anarchy is a word that has been heavily propagandized.
I'm sure.
Because
Like
if you talk,
socialism.
yeah, well, because anarchism is a form of socialism. It's a school of socialism. But if you talk to anarchists, what they'll say is anarchy is order, and that in fact it is these hierarchs because you get demagogues, and the demagoguery creates the chaos, and so that in a
Mm,
lateral society, without demagoguery, we would be more orderly.
mm, mm. Well, I mean, recent events perhaps prove that may be true. Who knows? I mean,
I mean, ultimately, my argument for anarchism is that we should just limit access to power. Elon
Yeah,
Musk,
I mean, I was gonna say people having power causes wars, not
yeah.
necessarily people not having power.
Well, we can look at it Elon Musk is a great work case for this. Elon Musk is the richest man alive. His daughter came as trans, and his wife left him for a trans woman. So he decided, I'm going to be a transphobe. This is a problem because because of his wealth, gives him undue influence over the rest of society. So this happens, and then boom, suddenly Twitter starts promoting more transphobia. Suddenly he starts hanging out with stochastic terrorists like libs of TikTok. Whereas in a lateral society, he would just be some random transphobe, and no one would give a shit about him.
Yep, because he has money and power. Well, money equals power, and you know. And we educated him here, for God's sakes.
Well, I'm convinced. I'm convinced the reason why. So he's from Saskatchewan.
He went to Queens. Yeah, he was married to someone from Peterborough. For God's sakes.
His mother's from my home province.
Yeah, his ex-wife is was a few years ahead of me at Crestwood.
So, I'm convinced that he is a big part of why the Conservatives in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and federally are pushing transphobic agendas now. I'm convinced. I don't have any hard proof, but I'm convinced it's his influence, if not literally his money. People who are sycophantic to him's money.
I blame Queens.
I mean, Southern Ontario produces a lot of fascists.
I know, and there were a lot of people who worked at Queens who worked with him who helped build like SpaceX and everything else. Like, I mean, my brother went to Queens. I'm not saying everybody at Queens is a jerk. I'm just saying Queens. It's a little rich people. It's a little white people. It's just a little, not saying it's racist.
I had a girlfriend who went to Queens and then cheated on me. Everyone at Queens is a jerk.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you know, they have a whole student area and there are some pretty bad parties. It feels it's Western, it's Queens, it's U of T. We all know it. We all know it. Right?
The purple people terrorize the community every year.
We all know it. They're the worst people. Gary went to U of T, but he went in through the bridging program. So, you know, he was one of the poors and the uneducated that they let in the side door.
Frosh Week at Queens is notoriously known for property damage.
No doubt.
Yeah, because there's a thing where Queens has this tradition where you dye yourself purple and you just go cause property damage.
Yeah, those are the engineers. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, although once again, like U of T also produces. I don't put on any one particular university because Queens, U of T, and Ryerson all produce fascists. There's something about Southern Ontario. A lot of fascists just seem to come out of Southern Ontario. I don't know why. Because it also like Guelph also like a lot of these southern. I don't know why specifically Southern Ontario produces, other than the fact that Oakville used to be the base of the KKK in Canada.
There were a lot of sundown towns in Ontario. Actually,
I hear BC's pretty bad too. Although I've not been out to BC in my adult life, so I can't comment too much.
There are some Dutch communities with some questionable practices, as I understand. Anyway, we will move on to Star Trek an hour into things. That's fine.
That's fine. Like I said, this is how you build. This is how you build that sarcastic relationship where people flaunt us as people, and then they give us money. Capitalism.
Yeah. Capitalism. All right. So Lower Decks. We have 4 episodes to go through. Let's hope it doesn't take long.
I'm not happy with this week's episode. We already know why.
Well, I actually have another way to read it. So we can read it one of 2 ways. So we will get there. But I said to Gary, I'm like, Green and I aren't going to be happy with this. But we'll get to the last one when we get to it.
I also do genuinely think it's one of the weaker episodes beyond my
Yeah, yeah, me too. We all three of us were in agreement with that. We'll get to it when we get to it. Okay, so
there's a great anti-paramount burn in it. We'll talk about
yes. Yeah. So episode 3, in the Cradle of Vexilon. The Cerritos visits Corizonia, an idyllic space habitat controlled by Vexilon, an ancient computer system whose performance is deteriorating. Freeman's attempts to repair Vexilon cause it to shut down, creating chaos in Corizonia's ecosystem. Meanwhile, Boimler is leading his first away mission to upgrade a power plant. He struggles to trust his subordinates and insists on doing all the work himself. When Freeman needs the plant reactivated, T'Lyn persuades Boimler to trust his ensigns. They work together and restart the machinery, allowing Freeman to reset Vexilon. The plant overheats and Boimler orders his team to leave. He is killed deactivating it, but later revived by Dr. Tin. Meanwhile, on the Cerritos, Mariner, Tendi, and Rutherford are tasked by Lieutenant Dirk to scan thousands of computer chips to find one broken one. Suspecting that he is hazing them, they retaliate by planting in his quarters a game of Chula, which traps players in a simulated world. Dirk impresses upon them the importance of their tasks and tells them that he was traumatized by Chula as a child. Convinced Dirk is not hazing them, Mariner distracts him by Rutherford removes the game from his quarters after being trapped in it and forced to play through it. Tendi finds the broken chip. Later, Dirk and Ransom celebrate their successful hazing. So
it was fine.
I was gonna say this episode was fine.
I enjoyed the Boimler plot a lot.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good because it was fairly in character for Boimler on the first time that he's charged to lead an away mission, to be like, I need to do everything needs to go perfectly, so I'm going to just do everything because I can't delegate responsibility. And it was very funny to see him like try and do everything and watch all of the other all the ensigns just kind of watch him. And T'Lyn, I really enjoy T'Lyn in all of these episodes, actually. I'll have to say she's a really excellent addition.
T'Lyn's quickly becoming my favorite character.
She's done some really good stuff in this.
Although Tendi is still my waifu.
Yeah, she's great. And I will note, this seems sort of like each of these episodes kind of like after the first two, I have a quibble, like some issues with it, but each of these episodes after the first two seem like kind of like each of the characters are kind of dealing with issues that they have to handle. And so this is kind of one of Boimler's ones.
Yeah, Boimler needs to learn to give up control and trust the people. Like I said, I undersold. I actually did really like this episode. My memory on it, because I didn't go back and rewatch the episode, so it's been a month, and I really should have.
Yeah, this one's been a while since this one.
But I do remember really liking it. I did like the Mariner plot line of like, you're hazing us. And then,
the hazing one was really funny because I remember thinking that I'm like, oh, they're probably hazing them because Lieutenant Dirk was being so serious about everything. And the best part is like, when they've scanned all the chips, and he's like, yeah, you haven't scanned the second layer. And they open it up, and he's like, he was like making it, it has to be hot in here. And all of the stuff like that they had to do, they have to scan them all by hand.
I love that they're sticking with the physical chips. I love that. Like that's how, like that's the sort of TOS shit that I fucking love. It's no one uses physical chips for anything anymore. But the lower decks is just like, no, this is canon. We're sticking to it.
Yeah, exactly. And they did work together to like stop it from happening. And like Tendi is like, I'm going to scan all these chips. And Mariner, well, I'll distract him, and Rutherford's like, I'll get it, and then Rutherford gets
Rutherford got
trapped.
stuck in the
Yeah,
board game, if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
he's like, oh no, not again. I'm like, oh, he's done this before. It was very funny.
The bit where they realize that he is actually sincere and that they have set him up for his greatest phobia on accident.
And his acting in that, because I'm like, he's just fucking with them. He's got to be, right? Like, no one's been traumatized. He's like, I was so dumb. I was trapped in it for months, like, or days or something like that. And I'm like, oh my god, no. Like, I really enjoyed it. Like, they're so nice. Like, they're all such nice people, even Mariner, that she's just like, no, we can't do it. We can't do it to him.
Yep.
And it totally actually fits in with all of the stories, and kind of the idea that all of these characters are sort of traumatized by, like, serving on the Enterprise D or somewhere like that, like especially Mariner, because I really like that for her backstory, actually.
As we talk about more, the episodes kind of starting to come back to me. We saw it. We finally saw it after 3 seasons.
Oh yeah.
We saw the Black Mountain.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, he went to the Black Mountain because he had to. Boimler died. Yeah, so he had to go to the Black Mountain.
I can't join the chat because it wants to connect to my Facebook and
is Paramount Plus Shelby. Hey Shelby. Is Paramount available in Canada? Yes, it is. It is, but it's a different kind of Paramount.
If you like we were saying earlier today, if you have cable, and you don't want to chip in for Paramount Plus, Star Trek, unlike every other country, does air on cable in Canada, which is where I have been watching it. So yeah, that's I've been watching it on demand with ads. The ads haven't been as disruptive as I thought they would be.
Yeah, no, it's not too bad, but it definitely is it has different offerings. Like, I've had it for a few times in Canada, and it like, mostly for Yellowstone, and it just doesn't have the same stuff in Canada that it does in the US, which is a little bit frustrating. Because, like, everybody negotiates different rights here. So what usually happens is, like, things get spread between a whole bunch of different platforms, especially in Canada, especially because we don't have Hulu in Canada.
Yeah,
so
I should I should pick it up just because the new Hellraiser is on it. It's on Hulu in the US, but it's on Paramount Plus here, and I want to watch that for spooky season. And
oh yeah, for sure.
whilst I am not opposed to the sailing of the high seas, I think I'd like to watch Hellraiser on my big fancy TV instead of my little laptop screen.
Yeah, certainly.
So I might put in for, like, the free month subscription and watch whatever horror movies they have.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, back to the episode. Another thing that I thought was really great about this was it kind of showed Freeman is often flawed as a captain, like, for sure. But it showed some of her traits that are a little closer to Mariner, because we don't often see how they're the same. And her insisting that she can fix this computer because she took, like, some courses in like ancient technology or something like that. Yeah, like 20 years ago at Starfleet Academy. And I'm like, just call Billups. And she's like, no, I know how to fix it. And, like, just all of the sight gags of all of the things happening in the ecosystem, like mountains forming, like the weather changing, like all kinds of different stuff, a volcano, what was happening with at near the power station with Boimler is basically a volcano erupting. You know, that was quite funny. And Freeman just, no, I can fix it. It's totally fine. I know what I'm doing.
And shut off the system, which resulted in Boimler getting killed.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, yeah, she's directly responsible for Boimler dying.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Boimler is a main character, and main characters never die.
Boimler's
As
an
is the
officer.
canon of Lower Decks.
Boimler's an officer now.
Oh, that's
because
right.
they're all lieutenant junior grades. So he
Right.
died, and I'm like, oh, he's no longer just a red shirt. He's a lieutenant junior grade, and therefore that means he can go to the
Therefore,
Black
he saw
Mountain.
the cosmic koala in the Black Mountain.
He saw the koala in the Black Mountain. Therefore, he's been resurrected. That's what I said actually when he died, and yeah, I'm like, oh, that's right. He's an officer. He can come back to life.
I also want to give a shout out to the animation team on this particular episode. I thought the animation for the Boimler plotline and Boimler, like specifically Boimler's animation, when he's like flipping out and he's like climbing over machinery
and carrying all this stuff, and like
I thought the
wobbling
animation
around.
for him
Yeah.
was really well done. I don't know who his key animator was, but they did a great job.
Yeah, it was really good, and they were actually very good at, like, they're always good at defining all the characters, like even like the background characters. And like in the final episode we'll talk about, they were very good at that, because like there was so much going on in some of the scenes in the last episode 6, or no, sorry, in episode 5. There's a lot going on, and you can see like they always define the characters so clearly. But it was really cool to have like Boimler's team be so different and interesting. So and just even their expressions and the way that they kind of watch him is great.
We've talked about my love for Titmouse. Titmouse is a great animation studio that has worked on a lot of my favorite shows. So
For sure. For sure.
like they did Venture Brothers, and Venture Brothers is next tier.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is first of a series of episodes. We talked about T'Lyn already, but really like solidifies T'Lyn as a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like not just like a good officer and a cool Vulcan character to have around, but she like is really a good friend. She tells Boimler what he needs to do to be a good officer to start. Yeah.
Lower Decks also needed a Vulcan. Like it really needed a Vulcan.
I think it helps a lot.
It like they're so quintessentially Star Trek, and while they did get like one-off occasional Vulcan jokes here and there, Vulcans are like the Star Trek thing. Like they are that and the shape of the ship are like the two things you think of first when you think of Star Trek. And I really think they needed something, a Vulcan there to riff on for the particular type of humor this show goes for.
100%. 100%.
And like I said, she's also just quickly becoming my favorite character.
She's a lot of fun. Apparently, Boimler was in a room that looked vague. When he sees the koala, it looks like the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks, basically. And
I've got to watch Twin Peaks. It's such a cultural touchstone. I've never seen it.
Well, and then the koala says, "It is not your time, Edward Boimler," backwards.
I did get the backwards talking joke. Like I'm familiar enough with Twin Peaks. I got that ref.
And I did see, and I thought it was interesting that this is the people on this planet. I'm just looking at a few other things. The people on this planet settled the planet, but were not the original creators of any of the technology on the planet.
It wasn't a planet. It was a halo ring.
It's a ring world, and they weren't the original creators of the ring world. Which I'm like, oh wait, okay, that's always a good idea. Billups also had a pet dragon called Fiddlesticks growing up, and he has a ferret named Lancelot.
Billups.
Oh yeah, and Rutherford's afraid of Lancelot. That was one of my favorite parts. He kept being he's like, Lancelot.
The episode with Billups' mother is still one of my all-time favorite.
Oh God, I love that so much. I mean, even in the next episode, which we can move on to, unless you have anything else to say about this one.
No, I think I'm good. I think I've said everything I had. It's not a particularly remarkable episode, but it's a solid episode.
Yeah, it is solid. It's good.
It's not it's good Trek and it's good Lower Decks. It's perfect. It's middle ground. It's not so it's middle ground in a way that leaves it not a lot to talk about, but it is decent. It is good Trek and it's good Lower Decks and it's absolutely watchable.
Yeah, and it was super entertaining.
Yeah.
But it didn't have anything to do. It didn't have the main plot, which Gary and I were just talking about before this, and it's a real slow burn on that main plot.
Yeah.
I have to admit.
Yeah.
So
One thing I've talked a lot about in the past with Lower Decks is economy of writing and how good the economy of writing is in Lower Decks. I don't think the economy of writing has been quite as good this season as it has, which is not to say that the show is bad by any means. Economy of writing is like a very specific, but a very specific like aspect of writing. But it's something that Lower Decks has historically been extremely good. It's like some of the best economy of writing I've ever seen on television ever. And I don't think the economy of writing is bad in this season, but it's not as stellar as it has been in previous seasons.
100%. I think so too. I mean, yeah, there's just been little bits here and there that are not as clear or as good as it's been. But I was gonna say, like, they mentioned that episode with Billups and his mother, because in this episode when they go to Orion and see Tendy's parents' house, because Mariner's like, I thought Billups was the only one who lived in a castle.
Yes, they did. I really liked
This was
have they cut staff in Rain Room before the strike? I don't think staff got cut for Lower Decks, although clearly Ryan McMahon is concerned about it because as we were talking about top of the show, he did put an interview being like, Lower Decks might be canceled. I don't know.
these look like some different names. It just might be different people in the writers' room. Potentially this season, or yeah, just slightly different names. Not the end of the world. They might just be giving different people some opportunity. So the next episode is called Something Borrowed, Something Green.
I like this episode a lot.
Yeah, me too. So after an Orion supply ship is assaulted by the same unknown vessel from previous episodes, I'm starting to think I know what is behind this, but we'll get to that. Starfleet pressures the reluctant Lieutenant Tendi into attending her sister Derica's wedding to demonstrate interstellar goodwill. Mariner and Tallinn accompany her to Orion, where the Tendi family is just barely the seventh most rich, powerful, and feared on the planet within the syndicate. The bride has been kidnapped, and it's Tendi's customary responsibility to rescue her. They track Derica to an abandoned spaceship yard where Tendi confesses that she was trained to be an elite assassin before running away to join Starfleet. The tip of the moonlit blade. So cool. On the Cerrito, Derica, who staged her own kidnapping, ambushes Tendi in revenge for abandoning her. The sisters fight in a super cool fight and reconcile, and the wedding occurs as planned. And the bride is the boy. It's so cool. And Mariner's like, he looks radiant. Sorry.
Oh no, finish your. I have some thoughts on Orion's, but finish your wrap up first.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely interesting. On the Cerritos, Boimler and Rutherford have become annoyingly close as roommates, but argue over watering their bonsai tree. Their conflict continues on the holodeck when they both appear as Mark Twain, but resolve their disagreement by acting in character. They recommend the same holodeck activity when Captain Freeman and aggressive Chalnuth captain fail to negotiate, but it devolves into a brawl. The Chalnuth expresses curiosity about the bonsai. When he's brought to see it, he immediately eats the tree. Suddenly content, he is now willing to agreement with Freeman. I can barely get through that because the whole Boimler and Rutherford plot is so ridiculous and funny.
Boimler and Rutherford Mark Twaining at each other is one of the funny. Like I said, it's one of the funniest scenes in Lower Deck.
Our nation.
Like, I definitely think this is the breakout. I know some
Rutherford
people
is a better Mark Twain too. And then they're both Mozart later. And
yeah,
playing the harpsichord. It's so ridiculous. I loved it so much. I'm like, this is the, and with the bonsai, and they call him Little Boney or something. I'm just like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I can't even with these guys.
I love the scene where they're Mark Twaining at each other, like trying to out Mark Twain the other. So much. It's so good.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good
scene.
when they're at first when they're arguing, and then later when they're getting along.
Yeah, both of them are funny. Yeah, they only get along when they are LARPing the same character.
100%. They only get they get along, but they're the only way they can resolve their arguments is when they're LARPing the same character.
Yeah, it's this was a great episode. This is probably my favorite episode. I know some people like the next episode after this. Some people say that's the best episode of the season. For me, for my money, this is the best season. As much as I love T'Lyn, and the next episode is a T'Lyn focus episode, I think this one takes the cake. I also I've spoken about this when we were talking about Discovery, because Jesus Christ, we've been doing this stream for a long bloody time. Like when we were
I know. I keep looking back at it and I'm like, wow, this has been going on for a while.
When we were doing Discovery season 3 with the Broken Chain, I talked a lot about how underserved the Orions are in Star Trek. They're the first aliens we see. We see them before we see the Vulcans. The very first episode of Star Trek, disregarding the pilot episode, of actual broadcast aired Star Trek. The Orions are the first aliens we see. We see them before anyone else. And they've still been horrendously underdeveloped. They don't get any development until Enterprise. And Enterprise just is like, yeah, they're all seductive and the women have pheromones, which this episode makes tremendous fun of.
Yeah, they're like, no, we didn't have pheromones. What? Okay.
Well, I love the Orion Dominatrix. I thought she was so funny.
Oh my god, she was amazing. She looks like Ursula.
Stop sniveling and lick my boot.
Ursula. She looks like Ursula. I said she looks like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. 100%.
So they've always been this sort of misogynistic, and like Enterprise try to cover up because they've always been like presented as slave girls. Like the first Orion we see is a slave girl. And Enterprise kind of be like, oh no, they're actually matriarchal and the women secretly control the men.
Yeah, this is a real
because they're all sexy with pheromone manipulations.
This is a real corrective to a lot of that, I think, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, but also it manages to correct it without changing it, which is like I said, this is that good economy of writing that I was talking about earlier. This is
it's a nuance. It's nuanced. Like some of us have pheromones. Some of us control people with pheromones. Some of us don't have pheromones. And some of us who have pheromones don't control men with pheromones.
And it really, and rather than just being like the Orions are matriarchal, and it actually shows it.
Yeah, it shows it. It shows like Tendy's dad is like not like, worshipping the ground everyone he walks on. He's just kind of a doofy guy who just does what his wife tells him. Right?
I loved it. He was just his mother's like this evil, conniving, like mob boss, and her husband's just like a sitcom dad.
Yeah, he's just Bob. Whatever. Yeah, sure, okay. He's like it's actually gives really Spock's fiancés.
Spring?
T'Pring, it gives T'Pring his family energy. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like her dad and Devana's dad would probably get along really well. It'd be like, yes, let's go find some food.
Oh.
You know, like
We, we, we
just
didn't talk we didn't talk about Strange New World season 2 when we are talking about Huntology, which is what we were originally talking about. But then I'm not going to interrupt to talk about that. But I do want to revisit that when we're done talking about Lower Decks.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just to speak to Foxy Alpha Roger Tango's point about the writing staff, I was looking at it and going, yeah, there's a lot of new names. I can't find anything online about it, but someone on Reddit looked at IMDb, and like there's basically no one from the first 3 seasons on the writing staff currently. It's
Oh,
the producers, the director, and some first time writers for the show. So
that's why
for
there's such a
some
different vibe in the
reason
writing.
it's been a little bit there's been a shift. I don't know if that was like a decision for like, yeah, like I know there was someone who used to be on Survivor who was writing for the show, John Cochran, and I don't see him writing this season so far at all. So I don't know if there's more people writing, but it seems like they've done a bit of a shakeup. I don't know what the reason is for that, but it doesn't seem like it's bad. It just seems like there's definitely a different vibe.
There, and like the show does have different vibes, and this would explain, like, because like I said, the economy of writing is definitely different in this season. Okay. So the woman who wrote this episode comes from Solar Opposites, which is another Dan Harmon project, and like this now makes sense because Lower Decks borrowed heavily from the Rick and Morty, which is no, sorry, not Dan Harmon, the other Rick and Morty guy who got like Me Too'd. What's his bloody name?
Oh, Justin something.
Justin Roiland, yeah. Justin Solar Opposites is Roiland's other show other than Rick and Morty, although he also got fired from that. So them borrowing Solar Opposite writers is probably very similar line to them borrowing Rick and Morty writers. I wonder, is Solar Opposites? I've not watched Solar Opposites, but I'm wondering, is it also a tick? Oh, Mike McMahon is also on Solar Opposites. So I'm wondering if McMahon is just moving his people around from different projects of his. But that's just I don't know for the rest of the writers. I'm just looking at the one specific writer for this particular episode we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So, but yeah. So, anyways, the one who wrote this episode is a veteran animation sitcom writer. Like, she, I can't speak for the other episodes, but this episode, the woman who wrote this seems to know what she's doing. She's got
it was excellent. It was sort of like the Tendy plot is like they're going down to go to the wedding, but of course, as the sort of the recap said, they have to rescue her sister, and that involves going to, you know, various places. I was saying that I in these episodes I really enjoyed that T'Lyn, Mariner, and Tendi are all hanging out together and seem to be kind of like friends. The running joke of Mariner getting stabbed is kind of hilarious. People keep throwing knives at Mariner and getting stabbed. In fact, one point they throw a knife at T'Lyn, and T'Lyn steps out of the way and lets Mariner get stabbed.
She gets stabbed like 4 times this episode. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. It just is you know, T'Lyn has great one-liners that are Vulcan one-liners that are completely deadpan but yet hilarious, like celebrating a lack of purpose is illogical. Things like that. It's a lot of fun, and they basically have to go to different places that reveal kind of what Tendi was like on Orion. And in the next episode, I think we see a little bit more of what she's like when the crew's emotions are heightened. I think it kind of reveals what she was like before she became like the science officer and being more serious, because when she's having more fun, I think that might have been more her personality. because they show they have like, you know, the mistress in the dungeon is like, oh, you Devani, you'd never turned down a good cage shower before, and all these people in all these bars are like know who she is and like
Yeah.
are impressed and afraid of her and like bowing at her feet, and the mistress knows her and she's just embarrassed, and I'm like, she likes to party.
Yeah,
Like she
she
just doesn't like do it anymore. She's like, no, I'm in Starfleet, I don't do that
yeah,
anymore.
she's a reformed party girl. I do
Yeah.
want so the woman who wrote this episode, Grace Para Janey, she did write a season 3 episode as well.
Oh, okay, cool. So there are a few people still. It's not
She
total.
wrote episode 6, Hear All Trust Nothing. I don't remember what episode that was.
Oh, that's the one on DS9. No, that's
Oh
not. Is it? No, I don't think it
no,
is. Let me check.
it might be.
Oh, that's the other Orion episode. That's the one with the Orion from Cincinnati.
Okay, you know what? That might be. So that might be. They might just bring her in for the Orion stuff. That might be her specialty.
Yeah. She obviously writes Devon episodes. She might write Tendi episodes now.
Yeah.
So sometimes in writers' rooms, people will write like take charge of a specific character.
Yeah,
and even if they don't write all of the like, they might write one episode, but also on other people's episodes they might like look at the story or the dialogue for a specific character and like modify that or punch it up if they're like, oh, I don't think Tendi would do this or say this or whatever. So
yeah,
like she might be the Tendi person on the show.
it doesn't look like she comes in before season 3, but that's when they started. Season 3 is when they got into when they started bringing in Tendi's background, because Tendi's Orion culture never really came up before that.
Yeah, so she might just be like responsible for Tendi and Tendi's background. That would make sense. And I mean, I thought it was great. Like all of this stuff is super super fun and cool. I like the girls hanging out together. I like everything that, like you were saying, I like everything they did with Orion culture. I think it's really funny. I think that I also like your point that they showed it. They didn't tell us about it. They showed it. And I like that T'Lyn, I think T'Lyn was like, I'm going to use this as a report to the High Council because people don't know about Orion culture. And I think it was an excuse.
I really like the way this show does gendered relationships. I really like all the girls together, and I really like all the boys together. With this show.
And it doesn't feel toxic, right? It just feels like bonding.
Especially with the boys, you see a lot of male relationships in TV shows feel really toxic, and Boimler
and Rutherford are wearing like Mark Twain.
Even when they are toxic, because this is the one episode where they're kind of toxic.
They're just not communicating well.
They resolve it in the most hilarious and wholesome way, which is they get dressed like Mark Twain and they talk about their differences.
They're like, no, when they're telling Freeman, no, you have to do the accent. And then the Chara, that was a Southern accent. I'm from Southern
Chara, that was the accent. Okay, then.
Oh my god, it was just so dumb. I loved it. I was just it's incredible. That was incredible.
He just eats their tree for no reason.
And then he just ate their tree and he was happy, and I'm like, you just want somebody to be miserable? What is going on? I don't even know what's happening.
Like, it does kind of stretch credulity.
It was amazing. I don't even care. Like
the point where like Rutherford and Boimler are like, Captain, we know how to solve this problem, and it's just
well, they used the exact same word. She used the exact same phrase as they did, and they're like, it was like an 80s sitcom. I think that's why it worked.
The fact that this like really aggressive alien and the captain are just like, yes, we'll go along with this.
I know. He's wearing the wig. It was amazing. I'm crying talking about it because it's just so good. And I think it was just such a good, I think the reason why it worked. It was just so ridiculous and such a good counterpoint with the story that's like about friends helping friends
Yeah,
and
well,
sisters who are like, you know, even in that scene, the scene basically, yeah, like they kind of, in the recap, it's a short scene, but you know, Derica feels abandoned by Tendi because, you know, she just left her to do the job, and Tendi in the end, like, her sister kicks her ass, and there's a great part where Talin is like thinking that, you know, she might need to step in, and Mariner is like, don't,
yeah,
because she knows it's family shit, but Talin is like that protective of Tendi that she's like, I don't want her to get hurt. And I'm like,
yeah.
I love you guys so
The,
much,
I mean, that's
you
what makes
know?
the Rutherford Boimler story is what part of what makes it work so well is the A plot is kind of dark.
Well, I
Like it's
mean, it's
funny,
a
but
little dark, but it's just, it's very sincere,
yeah,
you
but
know?
it's like I said, like it as like the joke, the running gag of this episode for the A plot is that Mariner gets stabbed a lot.
Yes, I know, they're
Like
just throwing.
so it's kind of dark, it's kind of violent, it's kind of edgy, it's kind of gritty. Like there's dominatrixes and like Mariner's
Men
getting
in cages
stabbed
dancing.
and like
Half naked
um
Orion men.
and then it's just and then it
Hacks.
flashes back to Boimler and Rutherford just being the biggest goofballs.
Yep. Yeah, I think that that's part of it. And I just, you know, in the end they work it out because she Tendi says, I never wanted to do this and I knew you could, and I'm sorry, I should have asked you. And Derica is like, actually I wanted to do it, and I just thought I wouldn't be as good as you. She's like, are you kidding? You're amazing. And you know, and that's where, you know, Talin and Mariner are good friends, because they're like, Talin, yes, I was also alarmed by your combat ability.
Well, we in the other in both in the DS9 episode and in the other Orion Homeworld episode, we saw that Tendi actually has some serious combat chops.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It was amazing. And
like
the
see,
other part
see
that's great. Who wants to hotwire a stolen ship? I do not.
um I mean Sweet Cinnamon Roll, who is secretly like a force of utter destruction, is one of my favorite fictional archetypes.
Hmm.
Like going back to D&D, my favorite D&D archetype is Halfling Barbarian.
Yes, yes, yep.
So
One of the things I also enjoyed, and going back to Talin being a good friend, is when she Tendi asks, you know, can you leave some parts out of your report to the High Council?
mhm.
And Talin says that her report got damaged and throws it out the side, and says that
Although
research,
that's
that the observation without consent would be unethical. And I said, which is not something Starfleet is good about. But I said, yay, Tendi. I said, yay, Talin. That's great research protocol. Good science. You know, in
that's that reckless
anthropological. Yeah.
that's that reckless emotional disobey for orders that got her in trouble
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, it is. But I was like, but that is good research protocol for anthropological research.
Yeah, which
You
is
know,
effectively what she was doing.
yeah, and that's why I was really happy that they put that in, because I'm
Yeah,
like, because that's how you do good science. That's how you do good science. You
yeah.
get, if you're observing people and they, you know, they don't want you to say what you saw, you don't use that data. And
Speaking
I'm
of,
like,
I mean, this is how you this is because you respect close cultural practices, right? Like that's just
you have to. You
yeah.
have to. And people didn't do it in the past, and fucked up things happened. So
Uh, speaking of Talin, let's move on to the next episode, which is a Talin episode, and also very good.
100%. Yes, yes, and shows, you know, what again, it shows why, like, it shows that people are developing relationships with her,
Mhm.
and in a lot of ways, because people You know, as Gary says,
What?
amped up Mariner is a lot of fun. And shows some ways again that Mariner and her mom are the same. So and brings back Betazoids and 3 really great voice actors in this episode as well. So it's called Empathological Fallacies. The Cerrito escorts 3 boisterous Betazoid diplomats. They are voiced by Rachel Dratch from Saturday Night Live, Janelle Jones from Abbott Elementary, and Wendy Malick, who's probably best known from Just Shoot Me, but she was also BoJack Horseman's mom.
Okay.
So
We all know I love me some BoJack Horseman. It's one of my favorite TV shows ever. I just want to say, I'm always delighted to return for the workplace harassment. Betazoids.
yes, workplace harassment Betazoids, or are they workplace harassment? Well, they are.
They
But
are.
they're
They
also
definitely
other
are.
kind. They're more than just workplace harassment
Like,
Betazoids, but they are.
the one of the best bits from TOS is when Loxana would just show up and sexually harass Picard for a whole episode.
Yeah.
Like,
And
don't do
just
that,
everyone else she felt like, but you know, particularly Picard, and I think she just did it to fuck with him, to be honest.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
these are very Loxana Troy coded Betazoids, like entirely. In any case, T'Lyn finds their behavior and her time on the ship distasteful and drafts a message requesting to be allowed to return to her former ship and sits in the dark trying to send it. The Cerritos crew begin behaving in an unhinged manner, and Freeman suspects the Betazoids have Xanthi fever. Actually, I need to say, I noted this. Mariner's the first one to clock it. And Mariner and Freeman, about the same time, are the first people to clock that everyone's acting weird. And Mariner is like, why is everyone acting weird? Why am I yelling? And she's cursing a lot. And I'm like, that shows again that she's actually really good at her job when she gets out of her way. Which we'll talk about in the next one.
Yeah, I mean that's the next episode, which I didn't love, was all about how Mariner's biggest opposition is herself.
There are 2 reasons not to like that episode now. Anyway, Freeman suspects the Betazoids have Xanthi fever, a telepathic disease that affects others' emotions. The Betazoids, objecting to Freeman's treatments of them, reveal themselves as undercover intelligence officers and seize control of his ship. I didn't even know Betazoids had intelligence, but I suppose it makes sense. T'Lyn realizes that her conflicting emotions over her transfer are being telepathically projected to the ship, which further convinces her that she is a failure as a Vulcan, even though it's from Bendai syndrome, which Sarek had. Mariner helps restore her self-confidence. Logic, bitch.
I just want to say, it makes so much sense that Betazoid intelligence is just a bunch of middle-aged party girls.
Yeah, who would
the most Betazoid thing ever?
But who would suspect a bunch of middle-aged party girls to be Betazoid or any intelligence?
Just a bunch of cougars on prowl.
Karen Cougars on the crawl. Yep. Mariner helps her restore her self-confidence, which helps T'Lyn quell her emotions and return to the crew to normal. She does not send her message. Meanwhile, an overtaxed Boimler goes to train with the security team. Boimler's method of study is my method of study. T'Lyn is really out of control, says Foxy Alpha Roger Tango. She's just emotional wreck. She is out of control. She is having outbursts all over the place. T'Lyn just needs to stay in Starfleet because she's too much of a hothead for Vulcan ship. Overtaxed Boimler goes to train with the security team, but finds their activities to be silly recreational games. He later witnesses the security crew easily handle the Betazoid threat, including someone who just a slam poet who steps out of the way of the Betazoid because her thoughts can't be read. And Shax tells Boimler that they were trying to help him relax, since being a protector also means protecting the crew's mental state. Before leaving, the Betazoid agents share an image of the mysterious vessel that has been attacking other ships. I was gonna say Boimler's method of study is like, I realized I am also a little bit like Boimler sometimes, because Boimler's method of study is like mine, where he's like, I'll just get it right and then I can go have fun, which was like me writing my MRP. I can eat when I'm done, Gary. I'll
The
just starve myself till I'm finished.
I didn't love the boiler plot. Uh, the,
It
the
was
the gag the gag didn't work on me.
it was okay. It was okay.
Um,
Like I like the
yeah,
idea
I
of
didn't
the
hate it,
security team protecting people's mental state as well as their physical
but
state, but
the
it
the
was all right.
security team being like, I mean, Boimler showing up to a security team meeting thinking that it's going to be um badass, and then it being like we're doing slam poetry is very very lower decks, and also this is something that a lot of new Trek has forgotten is that Star Trek has always they've always like every like TOS, sorry, TNG, like Riker plays the trombone, and like they're always going to like art recitals, and they're always like doing shit like that in like TNG
Yeah, they
and
did have that rock,
DS9.
they did have that band on the ship a while back, but there hasn't been a lot of that since.
I mean, Lower Decks gets
They
it
made
better
them go
than
to the spa too. But
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, Lower Decks definitely gets that aspect of Trek,
Yeah, yeah.
but I find a lot of the other new Treks don't.
Yes, it's
Like
true.
other than Pike being really into cooking. What are the hobbies of anyone else on that ship? Like, is Nurse Chapel's main hobby romantic drama?
I think so, yes. I believe so.
Just
And
full
whatever kind
time.
of like weird genetic stuff she does.
Yeah. So
I
like,
don't think that counts.
I think like so I think
I
this
think
is something
Erica
that
does something. I don't know.
Ortega is
Gossips.
Ortega's
Ortega's
entire purpose is I fly the ship. Like she has no
no
characterization,
Ortega's gossips and sticks her nose into other people's
but
business
like she doesn't have
primarily.
like. But there's no hobby. There's no like Picard playing the flute or Riker
Yeah,
playing
I
saxophone
think
or like
Strange New Worlds people's hobby is other people's business. Like you said, romantic drama. I think
yeah.
maybe their hobby is like getting involved in
But
their other people's shit.
I just bring it up because I think this is an aspect of Trek that
No,
strange
not at
that
all.
Lower Decks really gets that like a lot of the newer Treks don't.
Oh yeah,
Um,
like when they were playing the Star Trek video game, the Klingon
mhm,
video, the combination between the
yeah,
Star Trek
and
video game and D&D, basically. Yeah,
and season one, Mariner's always complaining about how she has to go to her coworkers' poetry recitals.
yeah. Saru
So
does plant stuff on Disco. Actually,
yeah,
Disco's a little bit better about that too. They do that. Saru has his plants, and they have a few things. Michael is not very good about doing stuff. Michael's, an
yeah,
overachiever.
I'd say, but I mean, even like what's Tilly's hobby? She's defined exclusively by her job, which is an engineer, which is like so like Star Trek. One thing that makes like go, and I didn't realize this until I saw a Jesse Gender video specifically about this topic.
Mhm.
Which is Star Trek doesn't understand you. Star Trek doesn't understand eugenics. If you want to like that's the name of the video. It's her most recent one on her main channel. But I was like, she pointed it out, and I was like, yeah, because like a lot of new Trek really. I mean, I sort of wanted to talk about this when we went to the ontology for Strange
Mhm.
New Worlds, but a lot of new Trek people are defined by their jobs, whereas old Trek people had lives outside their jobs. I don't like Voyager, but uh, Janeway had her holo novels. She liked romance novels. Cisco liked baseball.
Yeah, there was a lot of holodeck stuff, and I mean, Lower
Yeah,
Decks does a lot of holodeck stuff.
right.
Like this whole plot where they're like,
Mhm.
"Okay, we'll work out our
Yeah.
problems by dressing."
O'Brien likes cheesy 90s spy novels. Like
Yeah. Him and
there's
Bashir do all
yeah.
that
So
stuff,
where like Ensign Kim likes pulpy sci-fi, pulpy retro sci-fi.
and
So like
he would play. He used to play the violin, but he
mhm.
left it at the dog room.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so like there was a lot of old Trek really, really like try to make like work doesn't define these characters.
Mhm.
Whereas like a lot of New Trek has forgotten that. Like I said, Ortega's whole character is I fly the ship. It's like a mantra for her. But she doesn't
Mhm.
have a life outside the ship. Whereas like Strange New World, oh sorry, no, Lower Decks really understands that these characters have lives beyond their jobs in a way that none of the other New Treks seem to, and I really appreciate it. So I just want to say, because even though the bit where like the security teams are like doing poetry and things unrelated to security as a joke didn't work for me. I didn't think it was funny. But I really like what it says about this crew.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting, like that they put it says a lot that they put so much emphasis on that. And it was kind of fun at the end to see the Malcolm Reed puzzle.
Yeah, well, and then of course when there is a security threat towards the end of the episode, they fucking drop their games and they're like, okay, the security threat. We are security officers.
They
Let's
they
deal with
take
it.
down, and those Betazoid intelligence officers were like hardcore. That woman ran up a wall, but they took them down. So,
Yeah.
they show that they're well trained either way, which is
But
great.
yeah, so far we've talked a lot about the B plot and like a total digression into my beefs with the Stranger World season 2.
Yes.
But let's talk more about the A plot.
Caitians used to eat Betazoids, so which I assume is a reference to the alt disco world where where humans used
Yeah,
to eat Saru's people.
there's a
So
strange amount of cannibalism in Discovery because like also what's her name, Michelle Yeoh's character, the not the Empress, her character, because she got eaten by Klingons.
yeah. So I'm assuming like that's a reference to, but like, I'm assuming that's the Emperor eating.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah. But that was kind of funny, and it was really amusing to see like Tana go off and go running up, like being like full cat mode to Lynn. I think she's less than effective. I think that's what makes Lynn so funny. Is Lynn is master of the understatement.
Yeah, that's. I mean, her humor is, and she fills a role as strange. Not only does Strange New World need it, not only does strange. Sorry, I keep saying Strange New World. Not only did Lower Decks need a Vulcan, it needed a straight man,
Hmm.
and T'Lyn is the ultimate straight man.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, she's very good at it. Yeah, she's very good at like this, and she was so annoyed by this whole situation. Right, these people and these women,
yeah,
that it was highly entertaining. Like you could the and again, credit to the animators. They're very good at animating like Lynn's facial expressions because they're very like subtle, but you
hmm
can tell when she's annoyed and you can tell when she's kind of happy or when she likes
she,
someone more.
she's such a subtle character that you can only a studio with lots of experience like Titmouse could really do her justice.
Mhm. It's really cool. And it was cool that these actually these Betazoid like awesome Betazoid intelligence officers are all like older women and they're talking about the xanthe fever like it's menopause. And they're
Oh, I
like,
didn't even
we're
clock that.
we're
I
not
didn't
old
even.
enough to have xanthe fever.
Oh, I totally missed that. You're totally right. That's exactly what that was.
Yeah,
Oh, I
it
can't
was
believe I
pretty
didn't catch
funny.
that.
And it is funny, like, because, like, knowing as someone, like, who's kind of, like, dealing with that situation, it's like, no one talks about that, and you don't know anything about it, and people can get really offended around it, and so, it is pretty hilarious. So, yeah, I like, look, we're all women of a certain age, it's okay, right? Like, nothing to be ashamed of here. But it's interesting that I'm wondering they were looking for they said telepathic disturbances.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that has anything to do with the ship as well, because in the end they do hand over an image of the ship that has been like zapping people or zapping
Mm-hmm.
ships, destroying ships, and
Yeah.
presumably zapping
Yeah,
the
the meta
crews.
plot that has been teased at the intro of every episode
And
this season.
I
We won't really
noticed
talk about it, but
I've noticed that they're actually taking one of each kind of
each species.
each species. Yeah.
Yep.
Which, like we talked
I
about how it may be a menagerie kind of thing.
are you also in agreement with me that it's not that they're not killing these people, that they are in
Yeah,
fact
I don't
protecting
think
them?
they're killing them.
Yeah.
No. No, I think they're beaming them somewhere else.
Yeah. I absolutely think that's what's happening.
So
Especially because we
what I
had a
w-
menagerie, especially because we had an alien menagerie. Episode 2 of this season was an alien menagerie episode where a
yeah,
bunch of humans got put out. I think I'm inclined to agree because I think episode 2 was setting up the concept of an alien menagerie for this reveal at the end of the season.
yeah, totally. Exactly. And I think another thing that was it, like, this is the episode that I was talking about where it showed the animators were really excellent at being able to define the difference in the characters, because they have like the bar scenes, sort of the 10 forward scenes.
We finally got an
And
orgy scene that wasn't holodeck.
yeah, and they have all of these people like running around doing different things, and you can point out different. There was Jennifer in the background, there
Yeah.
was Rutherford's nemesis, and
Jet.
they're all doing different things,
We
and it was really great. Jet was there. Yeah, I saw Jet. I'm like,
remember
oh
they
my
thought
god,
Jet was
Jet.
going to be a main character. Remember we thought they were going
Yeah,
to add him in the main cast.
yeah.
He has
It was
never
like
been
we
a
were
thing.
so wrong about that one. But there's so many people running around and doing different things, and it was like really fun to see. I thought when I saw them bring in them into
Uh,
also Billups with no shirt on, I'm like, oh, poor Billups, run away, Billups. You know?
I want a relationship update on Jennifer and Mariner. I assume they aren't together anymore, but I want to know, like I said, I don't need it doesn't need to be a big scene. Uh like
Mhm.
like but I want a relationship update on where they're at.
Yeah.
I assume they're
I
not
also
together anymore, but I still want to be like, are they like copacetic coworkers, or are they like really catty towards each other?
mhm. Yeah, that would be interesting. Speaking of Mariner, her and Lynn, that was what I was sort of talking about in the beginning. It was really great. Mariner grinning all the time was hilarious, like where she kept like smiling. It was like, what the fuck, dude? What is going on? But her with Talin and talking up to Lynn, like her yelling about how she wants to kick the problem in the face, but there's so many problems that you can't kick. And then basically telling Talin that, like uh, fuck that captain. What's that captain's name? Yeah, fuck that guy. You're as Vulcan as a motherfucker. So, Spock's dad had Bendai syndrome. He's as Vulcan as a motherfucker. And then she's like, well, by the transitive property, it must mean that I'm also a Vulcan as a motherfucker. And fuck yeah, logic, bitch. And I'm just like, Mariner's great. And that was again where I'm like, Mariner's a good friend too. Like, like I'm like, that's the kind of pep talk I would give somebody. Yeah, fuck that guy. He doesn't know shit. He's an asshole, and you're better than that. Right? Like it was great. It was great to see that. And that was Mariner actually stopped a whole madness from happening because of that pep talk.
Well, and also like I do like, and this is very classically Star Trek, that like the solution to the problem wasn't violence, it wasn't action. The whole setup for the action sequence was a false flag. The
Mhm.
actual solution to the problem, even if I thought the like, because Vulcan telepathy isn't that strong, so I thought that was a little contrived that she could affect the whole ship. But that
Apparently, Sarek's bendy syndrome call is 10 forward to riot. So Vulcan brains are
I'm trying to remember this episode.
in
I
Sarek.
remember this episode a little bit. Because yeah, it's like, yeah, it's something he comes on the Enterprise when he's older, and I need to rewatch this episode because I do remember this episode because I did. I mean, it's been what 5 years since I last watched TNG, but oh, if you're in Canada, TNG is on Pluto TV, which is free.
Just put a link
Um,
there.
but yeah, so I should maybe go back and rewatch that episode because I don't remember it very well. But yeah, regardless, like I thought the fact that it could affect the whole ship was a little contrived, but it's Star Trek. I can get around it. It's not a big deal.
Mhm.
But I did really like the fact that like the solution was the problem was emotional maturity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually really enjoyed that this is the episode where I also was saying I think we saw a little bit of like what Orion Tendi is
Mhm.
like past Tendi on Orion, because she was like climbing the top of a tower of half naked people and running around drinking, and I'm like, oh, Tendi's gonna be so embarrassed later. So embarrassed. Um, but it was highly entertaining to watch. Um, I also like the shirt that said it's Romulan 8 o'clock somewhere. The Worf poem was Worf, Worf, torn between worlds, a warrior, no, a farm boy, the son of Moog. Clang goes the batleth against the armor of your heart. Uh,
You
Fun
want the next?
episode. I really enjoyed it. I really also liked Lynn sitting in the dark saying, I will wait 10 seconds and then try and click send again.
Yeah, really like a 2 episode banger. Like I liked the episode, the first episode we talked about, but I didn't love it. These 2 episodes I really liked a lot. They were really good.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, then we go into an episode that's not so good.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't hate it. Didn't hate it by any means. Lower Decks is consistently good. Like
Yeah.
there's no episode of Lower Decks I overtly dislike. The closest is the trial episode from season one.
Yeah.
And even then, I think it's mostly pretty good. I just don't think the twist works.
Yeah. I will say one last thing about this episode that I really enjoyed was the Romulans decloaking at the neutral zone and all of them going,
Oh,
"Aw."
I forgot about that. That was really funny.
That was really funny. And then the captain, calm down, calm down. You didn't actually think they'd cross into the neutral zone, did you? But they're also disappointed they didn't get to shoot at a Starfleet ship. They're just, oh, come on.
Give us a reason, please.
Why
We're
didn't
so
you guys
bored.
they say they came so close.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's go lurk over here now.
Yeah. I love how sneaky all the Romulans are. Actually, in the episode 2, the Orion ship was very funny because it was all women and they were mocking the guy who thought he was going to be a pirate. They're like, "You're just a plunder sorter."
Oh, that's another one. I didn't miss the gender dynamic there. I completely didn't see it. I mean, obviously, I knew that they were making fun of him, but I didn't realize that. It
He
was
was
all women
literally like
making
the
fun of
only
him.
guy on the
Yeah,
bridge when they go up to the bridge, and the
yeah.
women
No,
were
you're
like
right.
basically mocking him, and like they're like, we're not pirates, we're just plunder sorters, you know. So
I didn't grok that it was all women making fun of him, but you're entirely right. It was
yep,
because
yep,
Orion's matriarchal
yep.
society.
Orion's, yep. Yeah. I'd like to see the Orion from Cincinnati again. I really enjoyed him. It was very funny.
Uh, I want the other Starfleet Orion from the DS9 episode to show back up, who was really into pirate culture, but really he was
Oh
raised
yeah,
on Earth.
that's the guy, the one from Cincinnati who's
Oh,
like, all I know about Orion culture I've read from like hollow novels and
right, right,
comic
right,
books, right? Yeah.
right. So his only understanding of his own culture is like the biased, racist human interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good, so
Yeah.
good. Oh,
Uh
the show is the best Star Trek show consistently.
Up there, that and Prodigy, which is funny because they're the animated ones. But not funny at the same time. Makes certain
I
amount of
mean,
sense.
Prodigy also really understands. Uh, I don't know what they're doing with Prodigy season 2. They're promoting it, so I don't think they'd be promoting if they weren't going to be doing something with it. It's still off streaming though.
Knock wood. Let's hope. They're probably trying to sell it somewhere, I'm thinking.
That's possibly that is. I mean, if they want to sell it to, I mean, even if they just put it out on DVD. I have the Prodigy DVDs. I'm happy to buy physical media. I will buy a physical copy of Prodigy Season 2. Like,
Totally.
in fact, I've canceled most of my subscription services. I'm really moving away from these subscription models. I'm really moving back towards like no physical media.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Ever since WB started just scrapping shows, I'm just like, nope.
I'm gonna start doing that, and that's part of the reason Gary won't ever buy a digital game, because he prefers to have the physical.
Me and Gary, I will when they're like Baldur's Gate, the game I'm playing currently and loving. There's no physical edition of it. It is what it is. I got no choice. But even
Yeah.
with games though, like if you pick up if you bought a physical edition of Cyberpunk 2077, you aren't like, you may have this, but that game's a buggy mess. None of your updates are on that disc, and so if they turn out if Cyberpunk ever turns off when inevitably in like a decade from now, when the PlayStation 5 store, Xbox, if you have console versions of that, even if you have the physical disc, you're not getting the proper experience because you're not getting any of those updates.
Yeah, that's a problem with archiving games.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of games, and
Same goes for DLC.
I could go into a lot of things about that. Anyway.
Like I can't go and replay my copy of Assassin's Creed 2 and get the full experience because it's off the PlayStation 3 store is shut down, and that game has DLC. So I have the physical disc, but Ubisoft sold 2 chapters of it as DLC, and those 2 chapters are just gone in the ether now. Fortunately, Assassin's Creed 2 did get a PlayStation 4 re-release, but how many games didn't?
Yep. It's games are extremely unstable objects.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very happy because for a long time I wanted to work in the game industry, and I'm actually kind of happy I didn't, because it sounds, as much as I don't like my my hardware store job, it sounds like the healthier workplace environment.
You are probably not wrong, as someone who studies this sort of stuff and reads a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I who's looked into, like, who's seen a lot of studies and a lot of surveys about, like,
It's
how
awful.
people work, and how what ages people are kind of pushed out of the industry, and for what reasons.
Stephanie Sterling over on her on their YouTube channel just today released a video essay about how bad the layoffs in the video game industry currently are.
Yeah, I know someone, one of the professors I work with, who is working with another academic who's doing a multi-year study on what happens with people who are studying game development, and what their, over the years, what their kind of outcomes are. And they're interviewing them, and also doing kind of like qualitative, like, numbers analysis of what happens, as quantitative, sorry, as well as interviews, qualitative analysis of what kind of happens with their job search and things like that. And a lot of them even go into it saying, oh, I know I'll burn out in 5 years if I get a job.
Yeah.
And that's it's a lot. It's a lot to hear.
And you and I both know a lot of video game people.
Oh yeah.
Like we're
I know people who are like producers, like, fairly high up on games. Yeah.
You meet a lot of them through the LARP scene, because a lot of them are also in the tabletop and LARPing. Like I mean, I haven't spoken to them in years, but I used to know Zoe Quinn. Like
I know somebody who worked on Control. I know someone who was like the producer exec or somewhere fairly high up in Control.
I would have that's the Control. What's the studio that makes that game? I love their games. One of the few studios.
Housemark. Is it Housemark or is it it's another company? Sorry, she works for Housemark now.
Oh, I don't know. Housemark. I don't know their games, but Control is made by Remedy.
Remedy. She worked
Remedy.
for Remedy before. She works for
Okay.
Housemark now. I know somebody
Okay.
who works on Victoria 3. Was one of the major kind of developers of Victoria 3.
Remedy, probably by the fact that it's Scandinavian, because they're from Finland, I believe.
Yeah, she's Finnish.
Has seems to avoid a lot of the labor scandals that plagues
Well,
a lot of
most of the
industry.
developers I know are Finnish and Swedish, and in Sweden, you have to belong to a union.
A lot of the game developers I also know are not Finnish, but work for Finnish game studios. One of my best friends worked on Angry Birds, and that's a Finnish studio. And yeah, so although apparently they do have labor issues at that particular studio, but
Royville,
you don't these Scandinavian game studios, you don't hear the labor issues coming out of them that you do in Western and Japanese studios, and it's just because they have stronger labor market.
They also have things like 5 or 6 weeks your vacation to start.
Yeah. So yeah,
and they have better benefits and things. So people's inclination to complain is much lower to begin with.
Anyways, Remedy.
Yeah.
If you want to, I know your whole thing is American pop culture filtered through a Scandinavian lens, but if you want a writer who is very familiar with Western pop culture from a Western perspective, give me a call. I will work for you in a second.
100. When I worked, when I was, when Avi worked at Remedy, she was very encouraging for me to apply for jobs there. So 100%.
Yeah, there's a lot of like I said, looking at the game market, because I was going to go work for Ubisoft because I have friends at Ubisoft. Ubisoft is in Toronto, and then the sexual misconduct allegations hit, and then the workplace toxic culture, and like all my friends were talking about how good it was, and then I'm like, this is weird. Your thing is really good, but nothing, and like the stories they're telling me are matching the accusations, but they're talking about them positively. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, you think this is good because you come from Rockstar. Rockstar, legendarily one of the worst employers in the game industry. Because Rockstar is in Oakville, my old stomping grounds. And Rockstar is awful. So I get why people come from Rockstar, then go to Ubisoft and be like, this place is great. And Ubisoft is like, yeah, we're run by rapists. Because Rockstar is just that fucked up.
Yeah, and I mean, I won't say like everyone in Nordic countries is perfect. Far,
absolutely not. It's just you have better if you have a stronger labor market. What happens is that employees have an ability to push back when this stuff happens. Unlike in the Western market where you can't.
If you have a social safety net, they have a social safety net, they have things, they have a lot of like healthcare, they have things like, they have preventative medicine. They send you to personal trainers like for, issues. So like you're taking care of things before you get sick. They don't look at things as like, they look at they have community centers, they have all kinds of stuff that that we don't want to pay for basically, because they pay high taxes, but you get to go to school for free, you get to go to your community center for free. These are all things.
I want to move to Finland, and like, yes, Finland is like all of Europe, a settler colonial state in the sense that even if they haven't colonized they colonized Sami territory, but irregardless of that, like even if the colonialism isn't like as direct as in North America, they still got their wealth by extraction from like Europe or from Africa, and like that's how European wealth was generated, was extraction from North America, South America, and Africa, and Asia. But like that's Canada. I already live in one of those. So if I'm going to live in a settler colonial country, I may as well go live in a settler colonial country that has a social safety net and decent bike infrastructure.
Yeah, and there are a lot of Finns who think about that very seriously, I will say.
Also,
There's a lot of sympathy for a lot of causes in Finland.
also, I'm told that the Finns have a cultural taboo about touching people, and my autistic ass is like, yes, I don't want to be touched.
Finns, don't even like to talk to people too much if they don't have to.
It's perfect. I like it. Give it to me.
They will stand like feet apart
Yeah,
from
yeah,
each other
they're
at a bus
like
stop.
like so 6 feet apart is not a COVID thing. It's just the standard.
It's just standard. It's just standard. Finns, ideally, there are jokes about, how little Finns talk. Finns are perfectly happy to sit and drink in silence.
Yep. I mean, it is a country with a high alcoholism rate, which is a problem. But largely, a lot of what I hear about the Finns. Yeah.
There's a few different reasons, but it's dark and there's a lot of fucking intergenerational trauma.
And yeah, I mean the whole Soviet thing.
There's that. There was a civil war before that. There's a lot. My family history is a fucking nightmare.
It's dark and it's cold.
Yeah, and if you go back like 2 generations, you will find like war and trauma with any Finn. Every Finn has a story about something horrible that happened to their family.
I mean, that's. But geez,
I know. Like, who knew? Like, I'm like, like, I strongly believe, and we will get back to the episode and wrap this shit up. But I strongly believe if more Europeans, like more people with European backgrounds, more people, white people, would look into their backgrounds, they would have more empathy for marginalized people, more empathy for Indigenous people, more empathy for other people who have been oppressed. Because if you go back just not too far, you don't have to scratch much further beyond the surface to find in your family history bad shit that you can say, oh, this sounds a lot like what happened to Indigenous people in Canada.
Interesting
enough, sounds a lot like X, right?
Interestingly enough, speaking from a Native perspective, we don't get a lot of solidarity from Irish Americans and Irish Canadians, but we do get a lot of solidarity from Irish.
Mm-hmm. Gary feels a lot of solidarity with Indigenous people, like a lot of the time, and he's a Scottish person. Like he's not. He was born in Scotland. He's a Scottish Canadian, but he's like the British colonized us first, right?
Yeah, but anyways, other than the high alcoholism, the more I hear about the Finns, the more I like them. There's a lot of values with me.
Finns are a lot of about a lot of fuck around and find out too, which I think you would appreciate too.
Stay the fuck away from me. I don't want to talk to strangers as a cultural ethic. I really like.
Well, there's also a joke a lot of the time when Russia talks about invading Finland. They say, well, there are like hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers just past the border. They're 6 feet under. The Russians are welcome to come and get them at any point.
Yeah.
So they always like to point that out. But yes,
we're
avoiding talking about the last episode because we didn't like it, I think. So
no, I just like to digress, and I like to follow digressions. Like I said,
me too. But anyway, we'll get to this one. So Parth Ferengi's heart place. A Ferengi ship is attacked by the mysterious vessel as planned by one of its unfortunate crew, fucking Jeef, man, who is also caught in the blast. Meanwhile, Captain Freeman is tasked with aiding a Starfleet admiral of the USS Toronto with formalizing the agreement to approve the Ferengi joining the Federation, but is ignored when she senses that Grand Nagus Rom and First Clerk Leader are conning them. As the Admiral falls deeper into the altered terms of their agreement, Freeman cons them back with an impossible deal which garners their respect. Rom and Lita agree to the original terms of the Federation, earning the Admiral's thanks. Meanwhile, Ransom assigns the group the core for essentially travel guide duty, allowing them to enjoy the pleasures of Ferenginar. But Mariner is irritated by his unflagging support. Meeting up with her friend Quimp, she gets drunk and causes senseless fights until Quimp calls her out on her tantrum, telling her that she should accept being in a good place for once in her career. Boimler plans an ambitious sightseeing agenda, but becomes entranced by Ferengi television. Tendi and Rutherford are asked to pose as a married couple as part of their assignment, but find the romantic experience awkwardly too close to home. There we go.
I would also just want to note they brought back Max Grodenchik for Rom.
And Lita's actor for Lita as well, Chase Masterson.
I really appreciate, like, we can talk about hauntology, but I really do appreciate that Lower Decks, whenever possible, because like a lot of these Star Trek guys, they do Star Trek and they don't do much else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because like if you look at, I'm looking at like Grodenchik's, Grodenchik's, like he's done like the odd episode of CSI Miami, but he doesn't have a lot. So I really enjoy, like, a lot of these guys don't get a lot of work after they do Star Trek. They do Star Trek, and that's basically it. Like, he doesn't have a huge portfolio here.
It's the same with Chase Masterson. She does some stuff, but not a huge.
I'm always happy to see Lower Decks bring them back. I'm always happy to see Lower Decks like give these guys some work. They're always good actors. It's just whatever you like. Star Trek is this. You can live off Star Trek because like you can just do that. You do Star Trek. If you don't mind working the crowds, you can live off the convention scene. But like they're good actors and they deserve more than just the convention scene. And so I'm always happy to see Lower Decks bring these guys back.
Yeah, and it allowed it actually, the cool thing is it kind of pushes forward the story of Ferenginar and the Ferengi.
Yes,
which is cool. Yes. And which is a neat thing for this because it advances it past DS9 and it shows like cool things about Ferenginar. Like I love the Dominion War monument. That made me laugh so much that it's not a monument to the dead, but a monument to all the Latinum Ferengi
lost prophets.
The lost prophets. Like it just has Ferengi's names and how much profit they lost in the Dominion War.
You praise really keep things on brand.
I know. I thought it was really good. It was very funny. Like that was one of my favorite parts of the whole thing, aside from the Paramount and CBS jokes in like as you know.
The C plot only gets 2 scenes, but it's really funny, and it didn't need more than 2 scenes.
Well, the landlord cops is really good too.
That I mean, I would consider that part of the C plot.
Yeah,
the C plot is so So the setup is that like the Lower Decks crew is going down to Ferenginar to set up a new tourist guide, and Boimler is supposed to Boimler sets up to be like, I'm going to do the best. I'm going to go to every bar. I'm going to do everything.
Overachieve.
Over typical overachieving Boimler, and then he gets down and he discovers daytime television.
Just TV in general.
And there's a hilarious scene where he's like, so they just straight up lie to you? This is like brainwashing. And someone in the animation, someone in the storyboard, some storyboarder, or like, I don't know if it was in the script, but someone, as he says that line, has him sitting in front of a portrait that looks, well, not a portrait, a painting that looks remarkably similar to the Paramount logo.
I'll share it here. There we are. He's like, they just lie to you.
Yeah.
About the commercials. So
whatever storyboard artist or animator or writer got that through, I salute you.
The TV he watches also looks like the CBS logo, I noticed.
I did catch
The
that.
CBSI. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was really good. It was really good.
And like clearly riffing on cop dramas and The Office.
And The Office. Yeah, and landlord cops too, which was hilarious. That, you know, oh, you kept a pet over 20 pounds and
I will never be partners with a tenant's rights advocate.
Yeah, it was really. I was just like, man, this is. I don't know who wrote, like, who got all this stuff past them, but it was very good. And the Office part and like showing product placement in it. It was very funny.
It really took the because the Ferengi. I mean, the Ferengi in TNG were kind of just anti-Semitic, but the Ferengi in DS9 really became really staunch metaphors for capitalism, and just really kept that tradition alive in this episode. Really well done. So I didn't like the episode overall for reasons we'll get into. I did really enjoy the portrayal of the Ferengi. I thought that was really good.
I forget what Mariner said when she gets down to Ferenginar. She says it's like heaven, but if God, I forget, but whatever her line was, I said right after she said it, I'm like, oh, it's like Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's exactly Las
Vegas. her line was, I'm like, it's just like Las Vegas. That's Las Vegas.
Like exactly and clearly intentionally. Like
yes, yeah.
I can't wait to gamble at the
it said books, and I'm like, does that say books? And then she's like, wow, these Ferengi public libraries really go hard.
Yeah, like even their museums have gambling, which is like Rutherford's like, I can't wait to gamble at their museum.
Yeah, the Museum of Gambling and the Museum of Haggling or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. I can't wait to haggle at the Museum of Gambling, and then he's like, I can't wait to gamble at the Museum or I can't wait to haggle at the Museum of Gambling, because he does both.
Yeah, so the two big plots on Ferenginar, like aside from the main plot is Freeman, but the two plots on Ferenginar are basically like Mariner acting out again, which I was sort of annoyed by. Because I'm like, didn't we do this already this season? Okay, if this is the last time she does it and her friend tells her you're being an idiot, if it happens again, I'll be annoyed. If this is the last time, fine.
You know, I was complaining about economy of writing, but it occurs to me this episode has a half-hour episode has 4 plots.
Yeah, it does. So it's well done. It was just the plots that I didn't love. The Freeman one I like. The other ones,
the Freeman one was solid. The Boimler one was solid. The Mariner one felt like it was retreading what was already done earlier in the season. And the Tendi Rutherford one had some good gags. I don't like this relationship dynamic for them. We've talked about this in the past. Anyone who watches show with any regularly knows our feelings on those two.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like, okay, with Mariner, yes, it's a retread. And like my feeling is, like, we dealt with it in the Menagerie episode.
Yeah.
If this is just them saying this is just a pattern with her, she has to break the pattern. If this is her snapping out of it, great. Awesome. If it happens again, I'm going to be annoyed that they keep going back to it. Because, like, as someone who self-sabotages, fine, it's a pattern, and I understand that. But, sorry?
I'd say right. Like, I mean, maybe they're setting her up to deal with this at the end of the season, where possibly. But they've also done that at the end of the season, like the whole, like they've also done the end of the season, like Mariner learns to get out of her own way. Because remember when she created the hologram of herself, that was evil, and
yeah. So that's fine. And then the Tendi and Rutherford plot, they have to pretend to be a couple, and they think it's really funny, and then they get embarrassed about it. They have to pretend to be a couple because what is it that he
We are the horniest yet least monogamous ship in the fleet. So we have no one
yeah,
who's married.
Ransom says that the USS Cerrito is statistically the horniest and least romantically committed crew in Starfleet, with no married couples aboard.
Yep. So they tap them to be the married couple by pretending they're married. It has some good gags. Like I don't like I like their queer platonic energy. Maybe, I mean, part of this is because Tendi just reads as super lesbian to me, and I just like her in a relationship with a man is just weird. And I'm sure like some of my dislike of this relationship is just that, but also like I do like the fact that they don't have like I do like their queer platonic, like best buds. Uh, I don't mind like the end joke is that like oh, we hate being married, or we can't be, and they literally like climb up on each other to look like they're having sex, but they're just fixing engineering problems. I like that. Like I like
Yeah,
the fact that they're
I feel like, yeah, I didn't like it either for the same reasons, and I feel like, you know, we've always sort of felt like Rutherford is sort of asexual, or in an asexual throuple with Billups in the ship.
yeah, like yeah,
That's their true love.
yeah, well, that's the thing. So like Rutherford feels kind of ace, not as like hard ace as Billups, but still like kind of ace. Like ultimately he loves the ship. His true love is the ship. And Tendi just feels like a shy disaster lesbian.
Yeah, maybe a little. I mean, I don't even get that much off of Tendi some of the time, but
I mean, a lot of it's the hair.
she
They just
she
gave her this
yeah,
super queer coded hair.
yeah, she does seem a little bit like the last episode. She seemed a little bit into Tallinn, maybe just because she really loves being her best
Yeah,
friend, and she was almost like crying over Tallinn being there. So
yeah. Like
I don't know if it's just like she loves being Tallinn's best friend, or she's like a little bit into her. I don't know.
I definitely get like stronger romantic vibes between her and Tallinn than I do her and Rutherford, which is why this felt so forced.
Yeah. So I said there were two ways you can read this,
Although
and
I thought that they were setting Tallinn up to be a romantic foil for Mariner.
it's possible there too. So I was saying that there are two ways you can read this Rutherford Tendy plot. Um, and either way, I think this was done to be like, okay, the fans want them together,
And
so let's just
they
get.
teased it in season one, and so I guess they had to give some sort of payoff to that tease.
Well, also the fans really, there's a lot of fans who want them together. So
Hmm.
I think this is just sort of like, let's just make it kind of like explicit and get it out of the way and say it's not going to happen. So the ways I figured you can read it is you can read it as the way that they're attracted to each other, but they're uncomfortable and they don't want to be involved, and so they're in denial. Or the other way I read it was they're like Rutherford's asexual and she is asexual or some other flavor of queer, and they're good friends, but being forced into that situation made them realize how uncomfortable they were being forced into a heteronormative kind of like situation.
Yeah, I
And
definitely
so it
like
made them feel weird instead of just being friends, which they are.
my interpretation was more. See, I had a different interpretation than either of those.
Mm.
Um, and my interpretation was that the reading is that they are into each other, but the nature of their relationship doesn't conform to. So I guess it does give kind of a queer reading, even though they're a heterosexual couple, because the nature of the relationship, while they are into each other, doesn't conform to conventional heterosexual dynamics, so that when they were put into those dynamics, they didn't know how to deal with it.
That's sort of what I said, though. I
Mm.
thought anyway, like they're
Well,
not
I
comfortable
think,
being in a
but
heteronormative situation
so
or
the difference between my
oh,
reading and what you said is that in mine they still are into each other.
okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Maybe they are, because they did say, Like, I don't know, the whole thing is, like, they are supposed to say things they find attractive about each other, but they said things they liked about each other, so, it's hard to read, it's hard, like, it's a difficult thing, but, I mean, I can see both of those people as people who would be intellectually attracted to people,
Mhm. Yeah.
so or more attracted to the person
The
than the physical kind of package, so, I
I
don't
do
know.
think that the scene with where they temporarily create a thouple with the bird psychologist.
That was amazing. I was so proud of them where they got out of that. It was so good. I'm like, I did not know either of them were that good actors. That was so
Is
good.
I didn't know either of them were into me.
I didn't even know either of them were. I didn't know they were married
I
or
didn't know
they
they
were
were
in love with me. Would you like the homewreckers package? Well, you don't have to throw up in my mouth twice.
married. Oh,
Miggly Mo is so funny.
another
Uh,
character that like the this show has so many side characters that I just want to get more time. And I understand that it can't for various reasons, but I know I know McMahon's like worried the show's going to end after 5 seasons. I hope this is like The Simpsons where it gets like 20 seasons, just just to give the space to explore all of these amazing side characters it has.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's amazing. And I have to say I appreciate them naming a ship the USS Toronto and continuing Star Trek's recent little trend
Yep.
of being giving hats off to Toronto
Well,
as the, filming site for so many Star Trek shows
all the live
and
action
we
shows
appreciate
are
it.
here, except for Picard.
Yeah.
All the live action shows now. Lower Decks is animated in Vancouver because that's where Titmouse is. But yeah,
They have the Vancouver class ship already, so the Toronto was one of the Vancouver class. So,
yeah.
I mean, I thought that was really nice, and I was like, "Oh, thanks, guys."
Oh yeah,
Um,
just happy to be here. Toronto,
yeah,
Toronto's
just
just like
happy to be here.
we're just happy
Just
to be
happy to
acknowledged.
be acknowledged, as they say in Finland, as we were talking about it, to the town square. Which is basically what they say every time someone Finnish or is in the news or someone Finland gets mentioned in the news, which is
Mm.
how I kind of feel whenever Canada gets mentioned. It's similar energy. To the
That's
town square,
that's
time to
definitely
celebrate.
Canada definitely has like this weird minority complex where wherever mentioned in other media, especially American media, is like big news here.
Yeah, so that's
I
Gary and I often joke
I
whenever
remember
something happens.
there was an issue of Avengers um during the Hickman run that takes place in Edmonton, Alberta, and CBC made a fucking segment on it.
To the town square, we're in Avengers
Yeah,
celebration. So the main plot as we wrap this up is it was actually it's actually one of the better plots in these few episodes, even though this
yeah.
episode was weak,
I didn't like
you know.
I didn't like the B or C plot. And I mean, part of it might just be there was too many plots because there was 4 plots, even if the
Mhm.
Boimler plot only got 2 scenes.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I mean, I think we just don't like putting Rutherford and Tendi together
that
in general.
that is
You know,
definitely
I'm always someone with the X-Files who was like, don't put Mulder and Scully together. They're good
I'm also in that
friends.
boat.
Fuck
Yeah, I'm
that.
also in that boat.
Like men and women can be friends. Let's just keep it that way. And I
There,
mean,
yeah.
maybe they're like Mariner and Boimler are a platonic couple. Let's just leave it at that, right?
Unless it's Spock and T'Pring and Nurse Chapel, in which case we're like, get them together now.
Put them together now. They can get
Um,
married. They can all have
well,
sex. Put it on screen. We want this. Everybody
they
wants it.
are all 3 of them beautiful people.
Yeah. Do it.
Um,
I don't care
the
what's canon. Give it to us.
Yeah, but I do think like the Mariner plot line could have basically just been cut.
Yeah. Yeah, it could have been. I mean, unless they're doing something with it, it really
Like
could have
I
been.
didn't
Maybe Mariner's gonna save the day.
I
Who
didn't
knows?
like I you could have put more Ferengi television shows on there instead
Oh
of
my
that, and I would
god.
have been fine.
I would love to see the board of all the Ferengi television shows they pitched.
Yeah.
The intense, like, beyond late capitalism of Ferengi television is incredible. Like,
Like,
just even like the guy drinking the drink and the girl coming up to her and kicking the dude into the pool and being like, "I'm with you now that you drink this." It was like freaking amazing. Just
like
so good.
Love Office, where everyone's in the office and everyone's in love with everyone else.
And I'm like, "It's The Office. Holy shit." It
Yep.
it was just, yeah. Um, but Freeman, this was like pretty much a classic plot where it's like, your superior is fucking up and you know what to do. And Freeman displayed a really impressive knowledge of the rules of acquisition,
Hmm.
which turns out to be the key to, basically, the Ferengi are looking at joining the Federation. And this is key to getting the Ferengi to join the Federation because, as Lita and Rom say later, they can't just join the Federation if they're a bunch of rubes and
Yeah.
idiots and sign something if they're willing to sign everything away. They have to have respect for the people that they're joining, and that means
Mhm.
that, a Ferengi only has respect for someone who A, knows how to negotiate, or B, who can swindle them right
Right.
back.
They don't say this explicitly in the show, but like if Ranganar joins the Federation, then that means the Federation is going to be negotiating on Frangnar's behalf in some situations. So obviously, Rom wants to make sure that these motherfuckers know how to negotiate.
And they use Rom, like, I mean, I think they use Rom's reputation very well
They
because
really
Rom
do. I,
is
I
known
really like what they do with Rom.
Rom is known as, like, Quark's kind of dumb brother, right?
Yeah,
I think.
but he's
And
also the one who starts the Ferengi labor rebellion.
and he is the Grand Nagus. And so they play what Freeman calls dumb cop, reasonable cop,
Yeah.
where Rom is like, "I just love baseball. I don't know anything about anything." And Lita's just like, "Look, my husband, he's a dumb idiot. Why don't you just let him change some things and he'll be happy?" And, they have to keep, like, letting Rom get what he wants because he's just an idiot who likes to have a good time. And Lena's like, just, this and that. And they end up signing away half the Federation. And Freeman ends up tricking them, going, "Sure, I'll give you everything you want as long as you recruit one planet." And they're like, "Sure, yeah, we'll recruit one planet." Turns out in the fine print, she said they have to recruit the Klingon homeworld into the Federation, which is, of course, impossible and gains them, the respect of them. And it shows, even though much earlier, the episode we talked about way at the beginning showed Freeman being, terrible and thinking that just because she was good at something a long time ago or took a few courses, she can manage it now. This shows when she does have a lot of expertise in something,
Yeah,
she can
she's a
really
natural
do an
diplomat.
excellent job.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's a
she's
really
not a
good
technician.
captain.
She's not a technician. She's a captain and a diplomat. When she does
Mhm.
sticks to her strength, she's very good.
She is very good, and she knew exactly what was needed in this situation. And I think that comes from being on DS9,
Mhm.
um, where Mariner served as well. So I think this is sort of like we aren't seeing, like, their backstory explicitly stated, but I think Mariner and Freeman and her dad have all served on the Enterprise, like, during the Borg, confrontations with the Borg, and then served during the Dominion War on DS9. And so
Yeah.
it explains why Mariner kind of is the way she is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, going back to hauntology a little bit, this episode had Lower Decks, despite being the most nostalgic, explicitly nostalgic, because it keeps a lot of the it keeps a lot of the surface levels the same. The uniforms are very similar. The aesthetic is similar to Old Trek, whereas Strange New Worlds really gives it a really hyper modern look. But when it comes to the stuff that actually matters, the tangible, um, Lower Decks is the one really moving things forward.
It's moving forward in the spaces that we don't have, like,
Yeah,
canon, which
yeah,
is nice. I mean, like, it's not retreading stuff. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Strange New Worlds is kind of filling in the blanks a little bit, but there's nothing they can do that is different unless they just decide to break from canon. We have a big gap between a lot of the stuff that they're
But
filling in Lower Decks. It just doesn't exist
it's
between TNG and like Discovery, right? So
yeah,
yeah.
but Discovery's so far in the future that that's a big gap.
I know, and that's the thing. Like that's a big gap to fill in, and those are stories that can be moved like
Like
how does Ferenginar move forward under Grand Magus? Not
like
Grand Magus Rom is something we don't know and is a story
yeah,
we can move forward.
like we know in Discovery that Ferenginar is part of the Federation, because when the Federation falls apart, they're one of the last planets to remain. Because they, over the 900 years, become really committed to the Federation. But they're like Earth leaves and Ferenginar stays. But like that's 900 years. That doesn't mean that they had to, like, 900. They could have joined anywhere in that 900 years. They could have joined the Federation. So Lower Decks isn't held to that standard. Like they could have, these negotiations could have fallen through, and then 200 years from now, Ferenginar joins.
Yeah,
So they're not
yeah,
held to that
totally.
standard. But because it's what, 12 years after TNG.
Something like that. I'd have to look,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
it's enough that like all these characters were around for the TNG DS9 events, but it's still enough that they can pull these plots forward. And I really appreciate that it's willing to do that instead of just retreading. I enjoy that without. I really appreciate that without breaking canon. This show will update and pull things forward.
It's set in the late 24th century.
Yeah.
So whatever that means. Because
Yeah,
I can't
I mean,
remember when TNG is set.
because all the characters are in their mid-20s, I think. So if they were,
Mid to late, I think, yeah.
yeah, let's say they're about 30, which is really old to be as low rank as they are, but that's part of the plot.
I would say 27, 28. So I mean, it's not the end of the world, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah.
for them to have fought in Dominion War, it can't even be. So we're looking at like 7 or 8 years after the end of DS9.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Like
So they could have been either training or low ranked or something like that, Yeah, makes sense. And I mean Mariner might be a little bit older, but she's been like busted up and down, and
Mariner's whole thing is she gets herself demoted every time she gets promoted, so she's definitely going to be older than. Although I think Boimler also, that his Boimler might also be just as old as Mariner, because Boimler, for entirely different reasons, also tends to not get promoted.
Yeah, too wound up. So this was there were fun bits of this episode, and I like Freeman's plot, but other than that, I mean, I think but I mean, I think our issues with Mariner, with Tendi and Rutherford's, like other people might like a lot more if they're
and like removing myself from like my feelings on not liking not liking them together. I think that segment is funny and well written. The actual plot I didn't like was the Mariner plot, because we've just seen this with her so many times,
and every time you're like, oh, she's gotten over it, it comes apart again. So it's a little much. It's a little much. And I mean, I think if this is the turning point, if even one of her old friends that she used to do this stuff with is like, I'm too old for this and you should be too, that's great.
That's a good quote. I did like that scene towards the end where Mariner's like, I'm sorry I lost you money, because to a Ferengi, not a big deal. And he forgives her, and like I did like that scene. I did like the scene outside the memorial to lost prophets. But I mean, they could have kept the story arc and shortened it. If they wanted to keep it, it could have been out half as long. They could have gotten more Ferengi TV shows in, and I don't think it would have lost anything.
Yeah, 100%.
But also, just 4 plots is a lot. Like
Yes.
that's a four plots in a 25 in like a 22-minute TV show is a lot.
I mean, I'm impressed that they managed it in the first place.
Because that means like
But
each
I
plot
mean,
is only
the fact that Boimler was just sitting in a room watching TV probably helped a lot. But then they made like 2 TV shows and commercials.
Yeah, like
That.
Boimler's plot also could have been shorter, although I wish it had been longer. Once again, because I just want to see more of the silly Ferengi TV shows.
That would have been awesome.
But like, so that means each plot only got around, because you look at like Academy of Writing, so every episode's about 22, 23 minutes. So you're looking at about 5 to 6 minutes per plot of total screen time. That's a lot to convey in such a short period of time. So I think actually thinking about it above and beyond my dislike of Rutherford Tendi as a couple, I actually think that's my issue with this episode, is just that everything felt kind of shortchanged by just not getting developed enough. And I don't think it got developed enough because they did this Mariner plot that didn't need to be there. Everything that plot did, we've seen with Mariner. It did nothing new with the character. It didn't move her plot forward anyway. We know Mariner's like this aggressive fuck up who self-sabotages.
100%. 100%. That was kind of my issue with the whole thing.
If they had taken that out, I think it would have, or at least like cut it down to a D plot and given any of them either the Tendi Rutherford or the negotiation plots a bit more runtime, I think the show would have been better.
Yeah, totally.
And once again, I don't want to like, and I also want to say none of this means we dislike the episode. My opinion on Lower Decks is that bad episodes are still better than the best episodes of most other sitcoms. I genuinely love the show.
I think so too, and like we were saying, like, I mean, it's one of the shows that is, it's one of the few, it's actually not retreading things in a sense that it's just repeating steps or looking at things that have happened from a different perspective. It's starting to move plot that
we're getting character development
forward.
Well, I mean, and the fact that we're getting character development, I think, is what makes the fact that to see Mariner backslide so much, it makes it so frustrating.
Well, yeah, but also just saying that, you know, we're seeing plots from other Star Trek shows from like the late 90s and early 2000s, like move forward, like Ferengi, like other like the Romulan Empire. We're seeing like where these things moved from the end of TNG, the end of DS9. And that's nice.
And I think that was part of our issue with the first episode of this season, which is that it didn't do anything with Voyager. It was just a bunch of nostalgia pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Like we didn't see any progress.
Thing that I like, sort of thing. Yeah, exactly.
So I like that. I like that it's pulling forward these DS9 plots. I like it a lot, especially because DS9 is my favorite track.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of people's, as it should be. And it was the inspiration for Battlestar Galactica in a lot of ways, or started to move that forward. Mm-hmm. So the next 2 episodes, like I wondered if the ship that is the sort of plot that is a real slow burn, and I feel like almost is too much of a slow burn.
Yeah, we should be developing on it by now.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was Badgie, but I'm not sure.
Well, next episode. So you've clearly seen what next episode is. Next episode's a Badgie episode.
Next episode is called A Few Badgies More. And it'll be October 12th, and it says 3 computerized villains return to cause problems for the Cerritos crew. And definitely there are pictures of Badgie, which is nice because we've been predicting Badgie's return for a while.
I mean,
we have not yet seen him.
Badgie's the Moriarty of this of Lower Decks, right? So like Moriarty didn't get a lot of episodes. I think he only got 3, but he I think 3 episodes for Badgie is also a good number, right? So
I
Badgie being
have
this thing that shows up every now and then is
okay, I have a picture from next episode that I think I will show you that you will find interesting. I'm just going to share it on the screen. From next episode as well. Speaking of villains, here is a screenshot for next episode.
oh, all right. I know who
Uh,
that is.
that's a bunch of evil computers watching Lassie, I believe.
I mean,
At the
Badgie being at the AI Institute would make a lot of
day,
sense.
yeah, so
The
Daystrom
Daystrom
people
Institute.
are trying to train evil computers not to be evil by watching Lassie. Perhaps I'm not really sure.
I mean, Daystrom just being a place where you store evil computers doesn't feel very Trek. So Daystrom being a rehab center makes sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, and the episode after that,
Yeah, that's what I don't know anything about.
I don't have a title for it, but it says an unknown force is destroying starships and threatening galactic peace. Luckily, the USS Cerritos crew isn't important enough for things like that.
Okay, so this looks like they're going to get into this meta plot that they've been teasing. That's episode that's
8.
episode 9, 8. Okay,
8, yeah. So I thought maybe Badgie was behind the ship. It sounds more like it is a separate issue and Badgie will be a standalone episode, but nice to see Badgie back.
yep. Always happy to see.
I
Always
but
happy to see
that
the
also
murder.
sorry.
Also, always happy to see the murder hologram.
Yes, and that also tracks with you know, each of the characters, Mariner having to deal with an issue, you know, Tendi having to deal with an issue, T'Lyn having to deal with an issue,
Yeah, so
Boimler
Rutherford.
having to deal with an issue, and now we have Rutherford. Rutherford
Yeah.
has to deal with the evil that he has wrought upon the world yet again.
Now I'm just telling you, remember when they brought back Peanut Butter Hamper, a character I never thought was going to be revisited, and it was the strangest
And
episode.
it was the Avatar episode.
It
Speaking
was
of
so
Avatar,
weird.
that I think that's why I decided to watch Avatar, because I was like, oh, the Peanut Hamper episode is basically like Avatar. Peanut Hamper is Jake in Avatar,
Yeah, like
or Last of the Mohicans,
yeah.
essentially.
I don't know why. Just thinking about that, like how Star Trek does have these like 1 or 2 time recurring villains, uh, and then like because like Moriarty had like 3 episodes throughout the whole series, I think,
I
and
can't
even
believe
though
it's only 3 episodes and he's like so iconic to
yeah,
everyone.
and like the Borg aren't in that many episodes either. Like the Borg only have like 5 or 6.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, if I actually I don't think they're that many. I mean, they become bigger in Voyager, but I don't even think there's. I think 6 is overstating. I think it's closer to 4. There aren't that many Borg episodes, so like the format of TNG really like creates these iconic characters who don't actually get that much screen time, and like so I was just thinking like that. I'm like Lower Decks Badgie is kind of the ultimate example of that, but no, Peanut Butter Hamper is actually the main example of that.
Peanut Hamper. God, that show was funny. I just hope that we see more of Rutherford or Boimler wearing ridiculous costumes and speaking in
I
accents, because I until I talked about it again with you, I didn't realize how funny I found that, and like literally crying
It
talking
was
about it.
so good. I really like I said, I don't really like monogender dynamics in sitcoms. I tend to prefer mixed gender dynamic, but I really enjoy the girls being like the girls, and then I really enjoy the boys being like I enjoy the gender dynamics in this show specifically. I really
I
like
think it's
seeing
because they really try and not make it about
yeah,
being with,
yeah,
you know, they don't make it like Mariner's like girls trip, yay, but it's not about that.
yeah, and
It's
I think
about like just bonding as people.
Mariner, Tendi, and Tallinn have just a really good dynamic with each other, and Boimler and Rutherford have a really good dynamic with each other.
Mm-hmm. And they also like mix it up like they do, like Boimler and Tallinn,
Yeah,
and like Tendi
it,
and Rutherford,
it's
and
actually pretty rare that we get like girls' night and boys' night. Like, it's actually pretty rare that we just see all the girls together and all the boys together. And I think that's also why I might like it, because it is such a refreshing change from status quo.
yeah, it is a change from the status quo, and like, yeah, they don't focus on it. They don't do stereotypical things. I mean, aside from going to the wedding, and then going to the wedding was an Orion wedding where everything was flipped around anyway,
Yeah.
where Derica was swinging her new husband into the bridal chamber, and the bride is the man walking down the aisle, and all of these things. Like, it's totally like not what you expect anyway. So it was really cool.
Also, Tendi and Mariner are such big personalities, but they're big personalities in very, very different ways. So
Yes, yes.
I think them being such big personalities, and then like Tallinn being the ultimate straight man with like completely nonplussed by all their shenanigans
Yeah, except like
is
this is except she finds people hot all the time. Like, I find he's very aesthetically pleasing. And then this is where we saw an 8-pack. Like, just pointing out all the hot Orion men was that was just this is where we saw an 8-pack. Scientific purposes.
But I mean, that also makes sense, because like Vulcans, despite being like super logical, and despite the
They're
fact
very
that like
horny.
yeah, despite the fact that they're like, we only mate once every 7 years, they're always horny in
Yep,
every
I
Star
just
Trek.
love her. She's like Mariner's pointing out yes, he's very aesthetically pleasing. But like her pointing at the 8-pack killed me. I'm just like, oh, okay. I see why you get along with Mariner so well. All right, all right. You're
Like I
both
said,
you're both horny. You belong on the horny ship. All right.
I think they're establishing her as a romantic foil for Mariner. I think that's where they're going with her. I don't necessarily like that for her. I would, like I said, if I were to ship them with anyone, I would ship her with Tendi. But
I would like them all to be friends. I just like I don't like
that's fair. Like,
friendship like
I I have to
relationships because I
I
don't
kind of
like
have
to ruin
yeah.
things.
No, I'm kind of in agreement with you, actually. I do like, I want to know more about these characters' love lives, but I do actually prefer that the love life be outside the main cast characters.
Because yeah, I don't want to ruin their dynamic. That's what I
Yeah,
feel like. I feel like on other shows like that, it always ruins the dynamic.
yeah, that's fair. Like I said, I want to know what's happening with Mariner and Jennifer. I want to know if um I want to know if they've if like I want to know if they're like copacetic, or if they're like still feuding. If Mariner's still angry that Jennifer sold her out.
Mhm.
And I want to know what's like what was Boimler's girlfriend from season 1?
Oh my god, I don't even remember her.
That was a great
She was
episode.
but she was not into him at all. It was like all illness or fair some sort of situation. I don't
For a
remember.
pheromone situation, yeah. Um, but like I do want romantic subplots from this show. I think I overall agree with you that I prefer it be side characters.
100%.
But I feel like they're setting Tallinn up to be romantic foil for Mariner. I get those vibes. Mostly
I can see that happening, and then her getting sent back to the Vulcan ship or something.
that would definitely be the sort of end of season teaser that Lower Decks likes to do.
Like, I can see her not being a permanent character and them just kind of like doing that just to be like,
mhm.
that's something that would happen to Mariner.
Yeah, that would make, like I said, that would definitely be an end of season spoiler. I could see a twist, because they like to end each season on a twist like that. But yeah, the reason why I think they're doing that is because they set up such strong parallels between them initially.
They're very similar. I actually said, like, when she started to get emotional and stuff and, like, was talking about how she screwed things, I'm like, "Oh, she's a Vulcan mariner,"
Yeah,
basically, to
yeah,
Lynn. Yeah,
she's
they're very
absolutely
similar people.
she's absolutely Vulcan Mariner, and that's sort of why I think they might be setting them up. But
Or I would love them just to be besties, to be honest, because I feel like they're too, like,
well, and
even as a Vulcan and a human, they're too similar to be in a
yeah,
relationship,
well, and
probably.
I'm not saying I wanted this. This is where I feel the show is going.
Ah, okay, gotcha, gotcha.
I like
Obviously you want her to be with Tendi because
I
Tendi
mean
thinks she's
I
the best thing in the world too.
I think she would. So I kind of agree with you that I kind of want them none of them to be dating each other. But I
Yeah.
think Tendi and Talin are the best fit of the main cast.
I can see Talin and Boimler too, but I don't think Talin would ever be attracted to Boimler if, like, hot himbo Orions are her jam.
An episode where Talin and Rutherford date, realize it doesn't work, and then end up being like perfectly copacetic about the breakup could be very funny.
Especially with Tendi freaking out about it.
Yeah,
Because she would not be okay with them dating or them breaking up.
yeah, and like I think I could see like because remember when Rutherford went on date early in like season one, I think it was with
With the
the
Trell,
that
yeah.
trail, and
Yeah.
and it didn't work out, and he was just like, sometimes it doesn't work out. He was totally chill with it.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
I think I think Talin and Ruther. So I don't want a Talin and Rutherford romance plot line, but I think a
Hmm.
single episode where they date and then don't keep the relationship going after the episode could be very fun.
Yeah. Maybe Rutherford's not that asexual because he was in love with Leah Brahms, like Geordie. That's his
I
dream
think that's
girl.
I think that's an extension of his
Oh, of
of
his
his
engineering love. Yeah,
yeah,
because she's an engineer. That's true.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that might be
No,
why he could be into Tendi though.
but
Because,
well, I mean, listen,
he
that's
likes
why
he likes people with, like, science skills and stuff.
I, I identify as asexual. I still date. I still do
Oh yeah.
romances. Like,
It's
um,
just it depends on it has to be like a person who's worth being into, right?
well, yeah. I mean, there's like different types of asexual. I'm not sex repulsed asexual. I am horny asexual, which is its own separate thing.
Makes sense. I
That was my
mean,
screen name on Twitter. The horniest asexual was my name on
yeah, yeah, I saw
Twitter for
that
a
for a
long time.
while. But I mean,
Um,
yeah, I know there are people who are not into any sort of, there are aromantic too who don't want to be involved in a relationship, might be okay with sex, might not be okay with sex, right? Like there's a whole spectrum there.
yeah,
So,
I'm asexual, but I'm definitely like into romance.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
polyamorous. Obviously, I'm into romance.
Polyamorous and asexual. That just sounds like a lot of effort for not a lot of reward. I'm going to tell you right now.
I like being able to give my partners away to other people when I'm in the mood.
Go somewhere else.
Like,
I'm busy.
I'm I'm sorry, honey. I'm not into it. Can you give your other boyfriend a call?
I mean, that's one way to look at it. I mean, at least it is a lot of effort, but at least you can send them elsewhere when you're busy or not in the mood, that you're
Yeah.
not like the only person who's kind of maintaining the
I
situation.
I like long periods of solitude. I like being I like so like there are days where I just don't want to interact with people, and I
I
like to
feel
know that
that.
the people I'm with have other places to go.
I feel that. I feel that. I feel that. Especially when I'm like super stressed out right now and like all I do is work. I can understand that perception.
Although
Or
like
that
I'm
lens on things.
I'm single and have been since COVID, so
Yeah.
there's that as well.
I can what I'm saying is I can see that perspective because like I can definitely see sometimes being like, well, it would be nice to be like, hey, well, at least you have other people to hang out with or take care of your romantic or other needs while I'm in a shit situation.
Right. We're over 3 hours, so I don't want to get
So
too
we should
into
go. Yeah,
I don't
like
want to get too into like
we've
polyamory philosophy, but I could do an entire stream on just the philosophy of
I'm sure you
polyamory.
could, but we've wrapped it up pretty much. We know what's happening next time. We know what we think is going to happen. We know what happened last time. So in 2 weeks, we will get back together and talk about just 2 episodes, which will probably take much less than 3 hours. One
Yeah.
can hope.
Unless we digressed
Unless
a lot, which, to be fair, had we
unless
not digressed for a full hour before this episode, it would have only been 2
Oh
hours.
yeah, and then we took a little break and had a
But,
little digression again in the middle
but
somewhere.
I'm all about the digressions. I say
I am happy to always like hear your thoughts and catch up with you as well through the stream. I mean, if people are happy to listen to that for some reason, I'm happy to do it. I
like I said,
appreciate everyone who stays on the stream or listens to or watches it.
It's the
For our Star
digression
Trek.
that creates the parasocial relationship, and the parasocial relationship is what you exploit to monetize.
First comes the stream, then comes the parasocial relationship, then comes the money.
Yep.
To paraphrase Scarface. And with that, everyone have a great end of your long weekend. Have a great week. If you're on reading week, have a great reading week. Relax.
I'm back at work tomorrow.
Well, I know. I have students who are on reading week, so I'm telling my students to relax, do your assignments, but relax, chill out. Don't work too hard. I'm going to be busting my ass. But if you're an undergrad, try and chill. It's reading week. You're supposed to read, but you're also supposed to relax. Don't be stressed. And yeah, well, enjoy your apartment to yourself, as Green has an apartment to themselves for a little bit longer.
My sister will be back on Thursday, but that still gives me 2 more days.
All right. Well, see you in 2 weeks, everybody. Thank you so much for putting up with us in our digressions. Live wrong and expire.
As always, live wrong and expire.
Enjoy, and thank you so much, Green.
All right.
See you soon.
All right. Take care. Have a good one.